Chapter 17. Jita didn't say anything, but his eyes never left Chi Yu's body. When he heard his father's call, he hurriedly responded. Chi Yu and Ming Ming bid farewell to the old man and left the Ji family under Jita's lead. As soon as the three of them went down from the elevator to the first floor, they saw dozens of engineering soldiers rushing in from the outside, carrying all kinds of tools. They didn't even take the elevator, they actually climbed the stairs directly. Chi Yu vaguely heard someone say, "What's going on? This building is designed to be nuclear-proof. How can it be destroyed by humans?" Hearing this, Chi Yu couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. The design of a nuclear-proof bomb is so exaggerated. The three of them got into Jita's off-road vehicle again and sat in the same position. Jita started the car, but he didn't start it. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Chi Yu in the back seat. "I've decided." Chi Yu was shocked by his sudden action. "What have you decided?" Jita said firmly. "I want to worship you as my master." "What?" Chi Yu almost bit his tongue. "Did I hear it wrong? You want to worship me as your master?" Jita nodded and said, "That's right. I want to worship you as my master. I've always thought that I'm already very strong. This time, I just came back from the Blue Dragon Special Forces, and I'm ready to join the special forces that my father mentioned just now. However, it seems that I'm a little too hasty. My strength is far from enough, so I want to worship you as my master and learn from you." The last word made Chi Yu a little embarrassed. "Wicked. Oh no, this Jita. I have nothing to teach you. Moreover, you're much older than me, and you're Ming Ming's brother. How can you do this?" Jita sternly said, "As the saying goes, there's no seniority in learning. The one who has already attained first. You're so strong, so I must take you as my master. This matter is settled. Master, I'll kowtow to you later to formally take you as my disciple." Chi Yu smiled bitterly as he looked at Ming Ming, who was trying hard to hold back her laughter. "Ming Ming, is your brother okay? Did he go crazy because of the shock?" "Bah!" Ming Ming said snappily. "My brother has undergone special training, and his will is harder than steel. However, I'm very curious as to how you did it just now. That should have been impossible. Didn't you notice that all the walls of this building are 5 meters thick? The internal structure is reinforced concrete, and there's a layer of reinforced alloy material on both sides. Even a shock wave of a nuclear bomb can't destroy it, but you actually blasted a big hole in it. It's really hard to imagine. Our neighborhood is protected by an electromagnetic shield. No missiles can lock onto this place." Chi Yu smiled bitterly and said, "Whether you believe it or not, even I don't know how I did it just now. My heart is in a mess. Let's go back first and talk." Jita quickly drove Ming Ming and Chi Yu to the entrance of Qingbei University. He wanted to immediately take him as his master, but he was stopped by Chi Yu. Chi Yu didn't want to inexplicably have a disciple, so he almost ran away with Ming Ming. He didn't notice that in the process of running away, he had unknowingly pulled Ming Ming's hand. On the way back, although Ming Ming kept smiling because of her brother and Chi Yu's appearance, her heart was actually filled with doubts. She really couldn't believe that her brother actually lost to Chi Yu, and the attack power that Chi Yu displayed was really too terrifying. Walking into the campus, Ming Ming unobtrusively pulled out her hand from Chi Yu's hand. In Qingbei University, she already had some fame, so she didn't want to see her gossip appear. Moreover, Chi Yu's hand was very hot. Being held by him made Ming Ming feel a little flustered. "Chi Yu, now it's just the two of us. You can tell me what's going on," Ming Ming asked in a low voice. Chi Yu grunted. "Actually, I really don't know what's going on. Ming Ming, let me ask you, in the past generations of Kirin, has there ever been an ability called Kirin Arm? If there is, then is it very strong?" Ming Ming thought about it and frowned. "I don't think so. I've heard Master Zagru mention some things about Kirin, but I've never heard of Kirin Arm. Kirin's ability is generally determined according to the Kirin magic cloud that he belongs to. The stronger the thundercloud force, the stronger the ability. You're Kirin of the 4 magic clouds, so your ability should be thunder, fire, water, and wind. Where did this Kirin Arm come from?" Chi Yu smiled bitterly. "But I used Kirin Arm to defeat your brother and your family." Ming Ming frowned. "Kirin Arm? Kirin Arm? What exactly is it?" I'm afraid that even Master Zagru doesn't know. It seems that the bloodline of your Ink Kirin is indeed different from the previous Kirin. You'll have to figure out yourself. If you can control your own strength and unleash the attack power of Kirin Arm, then you'll be the one protecting us in the future, and we won't need to protect you anymore. Chiyu was stunned for a moment and said, "It can't be that scary, right?" Ming Ming chuckled and said, "My brother is a very arrogant person, and he's always very confident in his own strength. If you hadn't given him a huge blow this time, would he have acknowledged you as his master? Do you know? My brother's overall strength is even stronger than when I undergo origin mutation. You should be able to calculate this, right?" Chiyu was shocked and said, "Your brother is that strong?" Ming Ming nodded and said, "My brother cultivates a special technique, and what he learned is a killing move from the special forces. Not to mention me. Even if Sister Ryue wants to defeat him, I'm afraid that she would have to rely on her own strong defense to win. My brother once used some special drugs, and he was the only one who succeeded in that experiment. The experiment was forced to be canceled, and my brother became the only special forces soldier who succeeded after that experiment. His physical attack and defense are far beyond the limits of ordinary people. Otherwise, how do you think he got his nickname? My neighborhood looks ordinary, but not only does it have an electromagnetic shield that can prevent any missiles from locking onto it, all the buildings are built to the standard of being able to resist nuclear bombs. To be able to leave such a big hole in such a building, the power of Kirin Arm's attack can only be described as terrifying. When I saw the hole in the wall, you can't imagine how shocked I was." Chiyu smiled bitterly and said, "Not to mention you guys, even I was shocked because I don't know where that power came from, and I don't know how to use it to unleash its power." Ming Ming thought for a moment and said, "If you want to find the answer, I'm afraid you can only feel your own ability through cultivation. I don't know how to help you. When I go back, I'll contact Master Zagru and see if he can find out the secret." "No, Ming Ming, don't tell Master yet. Let me figure out myself. I don't want Master to have too high expectations of me. After all, this is not the ability I truly possess. When I can control this ability, it won't be too late to let him know. Also, don't tell the other Zodiac warriors. This will be a secret between us for the time being." Ming Ming looked at Chiyu with some doubt and said, "All right, I hope you can figure it out yourself." Returning to the dormitory, as soon as they entered the door, Chiyu and Ming Ming were met with the strange gazes of the other two beauties. "I thought you ran away with Ming Ming. Even if you've reunited after a long time, there's no need to be so intimate for so long. It's already evening," Su Qing said as she looked at them with a smile that wasn't a smile. Ming Ming's pretty face blushed and said, "Bad Qing. They're getting worse and worse. Oh, it smells so good. Big Sister Yin must have made dinner. I'm starving to death." At noon, she only ate some mutton skewers before she was interrupted by Modi and Yin Xiaoi. It was already evening. It would be strange if she wasn't hungry. Su Qing stared at Chiyu with her eyes wide open and said, "You're kidding, going out on a date with a beauty, but you don't even treat her to a meal. That's too much." Chiyu looked at Ming Ming and really didn't know what to say. In the end, it was Ming Ming who helped him out. "Gina, don't talk nonsense. He's my cousin. What date? If you think he's good, then you could be his girlfriend. Is it that rare? Let's eat. That whatever cousin. He doesn't have food for you." As Su Qing spoke, she had already pulled Xin Yun, who hadn't said a word, to the dining table with a smile on his face. Chiyu said to Ming Ming, "You guys eat. I'll go to the cafeteria to eat." "Oh, right. How do I get to the cafeteria?" Ming Ming was stunned and said, "You're not eating in the dormitory? Big Sister Yun's cooking is very good." Chiyu looked at Su Qing, hurriedly shook his head, and said, "Forget it. I'll go to the cafeteria to eat. It's not good to disturb you guys." After saying that, he didn't ask where the cafeteria was and turn around to leave. After all, this was the female dormitory, and in the future, they would be living together for a long period of time. Plus today's awkwardness, Chiyu felt that it was better for him not to have too much contact with this pair of lesbian beauties. Of course, the main reason was naturally that he didn't want to pay up to 500 yuan in food expenses. An hour later, When Chiyu came back from the cafeteria, the three beauties were sitting in the living room watching TV. "I'm back." Chiyu closed the door and stretched his body in satisfaction. Qing's treatment is really good. The staple food is unlimited. I don't know which wise leader made this rule. I haven't eaten so well for a long time. Ming Ming faintly smiled and said, "Come over to watch TV for a while." Chiyu looked at the sofa that could only sit 3 people, shook his head, and said, "Forget it, you guys watch." After saying that, he directly returned to his room and locked the door. If it was normal, he would definitely be thick-skinned to squeeze over to the 3 beauties. But right now, his heart was filled with the 3 words Kieran's arm. And for the first time, he didn't have the mood to tease the beauties. Chun Yun faintly smiled and said to Ming Ming, "This cousin of yours is quite honest." "What?" "He's honest, and he's indeed honest." Although she said that, Ming Ming secretly said in her heart, "If he was honest, I'm afraid that there wouldn't be anyone in this world who wasn't honest." However, today, this ruffian really seemed to have changed. Actually, Ming Ming didn't know that it was not only because of Kieran's arm that made Chiyu give up getting close to the beauties and choose to return his room to cultivate, but more importantly, it was because of the blow that Jita gave him today. Ruffians also have dignity. When Chiyu discovered that his strength was not enough to protect his dignity, his mentality had already changed. Returning to his room, Chiyu directly sat on the bed, and, according to the ascending Qilin art that Hai Ryu had taught him, he had already cultivated a few times before coming to Qingbei University, and under Hai Ryu's guidance, he basically already understood how to cultivate. Very quickly, Chiyu entered the state of cultivation, but he discovered that the thundercloud force that he usually cultivated according to the fixed route had actually completely disappeared. Not even a trace was left behind. Don't mention the 4 attributes of thundercloud force. Not even one attribute was left. His mind searched his body, but his meridians were empty, as if he had returned to an ordinary person. Just when Chiyu didn't know what to do, a deep voice sounded in his heart. "No need to search. You won't find anything. With your current ability, using Kieran's arm naturally has to pay the price." The voice was so familiar. It was the same voice that Chiyu heard when he used Kieran's arm today. He was not surprised, but happy, and hurriedly asked through his mind, "Who are you? Don't remember me? We met not long ago." The deep voice was very gentle, giving Chiyu a somewhat cordial feeling. Chiyu couldn't help but be stunned when he heard his words. "Met? How can your voice be in my heart? Ah, you can't be the old monster Xieji that Hai Ryu said had fused with my body, right?" "What? You actually said that I am a monster. I am also a magical beast among the mythological beasts." Xieji roared angrily. As soon as he heard that he had guessed correctly, Chiyu's curiosity suddenly rose. In addition to being afraid of heights, he was a person who did not know fear. Suddenly having a Xieji in his body, he only felt that it was very novel, and there was no fear. "Is it really you? Hai Ryu only told me that you have fused with my body, and said that I have the blood of Kieran's king. She was not very clear what is going on. Why did you come into my body, and what is going on with the Kieran's arm today?" Xieji said, "Don't ask so many questions at once. Rest assured, I will explain to you one by one. After all, in a sense, you're now my master." Chiyu's heart was warm, and he could not help but be very excited. Tian Hai Ryu said that even she was not sure that she could defeat a Xieji with 3,000 years of cultivation, and this Xieji was the king of the Xieji family. No matter why the current situation occurred, if he had such a powerful servant, who would he be afraid of in the future? As if feeling the excitement in Chiyu's heart, Xieji said calmly, "You don't have to be too happy. Although you are my master, I can't help you fight. To be precise, after fusing with your body, I have also lost the ability to fight." "Ah, no way. Don't be so emotional. Listen to me from the beginning to the end, and you will understand what I mean." Xieji's voice was still very calm. Chiyu felt a heat flow along his wrist into his relic bead, and then a cool air flow from the relic bead back into his body. His agitated mood suddenly calmed down, and his whole body was filled with a peaceful atmosphere. What could be better than the relic bead for calming the mind? Well, then you say it. Chiyu calmed down and waited for Xie to speak. After Xie was silent for a while, it said, "This has to start from the relationship between our Xie family and the Kirin clan in ancient times. Kirin is the king of the ancient mythological beasts. Every Kirin has a perfect appearance and powerful strength. However, the number of Kirin clan is very small, and Kirin itself has a strong reproductive ability, which makes Kirin often have relations with the opposite sex. Each Kirin will have at least a dozen or even dozens of partners of the opposite sex. Therefore, in ancient times, there is the saying of romantic Kirin." Chiyu smiled and said, "No wonder I like beautiful women so much. It turns out that this is passed down by Kirin. I'm a very serious person." Xie was speechless for a while and sighed. When the water is too clear, there will be no fish. When people are shameless, they will be invincible. Don't talk nonsense. You know, the Kirin clan has a very important position among all the mythological beasts. In the past, King Kirin commanded the mythological beasts of our clans to fight against those ancient demonic beasts and ferocious beasts, so that they could not grow. This period is called the Era of the Ancient Beasts, and it ended after you humans appeared. Because Kirin would have relations with other races' mythological beasts, many descendants of the mythological beasts also inherited a small part of Kirin's bloodline to a certain extent. For example, modern dogs and horses have Kirin's bloodline, but it is so small that it is negligible. The reason why horses are called the most perfect animal is that they have the inheritance of Kirin's bloodline. However, among these descendants of Kirin's bloodline, the only one that maintains a strong racial system is our Xie family. Chiyu said, "So, we are still related by blood?" Xie said, "From a certain point of view, yes. Our ancestor was born from the mating of Kirin and an extinct mythological beast, horned centipede. Because the horned centipede and Kirin are somewhat similar in appearance. Our Xie family is most similar to Kirin in appearance, but the shape of our horns, the color of our hair, and our own abilities are different." Chiyu said, "How much of Kirin's bloodline do you have, if you calculate it in percentage?" Xie said, "Ordinary Xie has about 30% of Kirin's bloodline. As the king of Xie's bloodline, I have 50% of Kirin's bloodline. I'm already the purest Xie. Unfortunately, we Xie only inherited a small part of Kirin's ability. Because our appearance is similar to Kirin, and our abilities are similar to Kirin's. In ancient times, we received a lot of care from our ancestors, Kirin. Since then, my ancestors began to serve Kirin, making the Xie family the servants of the Kirin clan, but this secret is only known to the people of our two clans. We Xie have always been known for being upright and outspoken, which is why we have the title of Magic Beast in later generations. In the army of mythological beasts commanded by King Kirin, we Xie were the law enforcers." Chiyu thoughtfully said, "So that's how it is. No wonder I felt a sense of closeness and familiarity the first time I saw you. It should be because of the connection between our bloodlines. Yes, it is the induction between our bloodlines. Perhaps it was arranged by God that I met you, the new King Kirin. As the king of the Xie family, the previous king of Xie would not serve ordinary Kirin, but only the king of Kirin. Unfortunately, there has been no appearance of King Kirin for thousands of years. I didn't expect to meet you. This is really my luck. This is the origin of the Kirin clan and the Xie clan." Chiyu said, "I understand the relationship between Kirin and Xie. Go on. I fainted that day. What happened after that?" Xie said, "Don't rush. Let's do it this way. I'll start with the Qilin arm. After I finish introducing the Qilin arm, I'll tell you about the matter between us. You'll understand more easily. In fact, in ancient times, although Kirin was strong, he was not the strongest among the mythological beasts and magical beasts. For example, the ancient guardian beasts Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Black Tortoise, Vermilion Bird, and some special mythological beasts and magical beasts had the strength to compete with Kirin. Some are even stronger than Kirin. However, do you know why Kirin is always the king of mythological beasts and commands the army of mythological beasts?" Chiyu's heart skipped a beat, and he said, Is it because of Kieran's arm? Siege said with satisfaction. You are very smart. Yes, it is because of the existence of Kieran's arm that Kieran has always maintained the title of the king of mythological beasts. In fact, Kieran's arm is not the real Kieran's arm. It refers to Kieran's horn. Kieran has strong defense and attack power, and Kieran's horn is the strongest point of attack and defense. At the same time, it is also Kieran's only weakness. Wait, I'm confused by what you said. Since it is the strongest, how can it be a weakness? Chiyu asked doubtfully. Siege said, there is no absolute strength and absolute weakness in the world. Under certain conditions, the strongest can become the weakest. Kieran's horn is Kieran's strongest attack. You are human, and the position of Kieran's horn is your right arm. Therefore, I will tell you that Kieran's arm is the strongest. When the Qilin fought with other divine beasts, magical beasts, or ferocious beasts, the Qilin arm was the most advantageous weapon. Not only could it transform into any form of weapon, but it also had the strongest offensive and defensive power. The Qilin arm appearing in the Firmament Breaker was definitely not a lie. In fact, ordinary Kieran can only really launch an attack with Kieran's arm once in a lifetime. I'm confused by what you said. Didn't you just say that Kieran's arm can transform into a weapon to attack? Why do you say that it can only attack once? Siege said, Kieran's arm can be used for attack and defense at any time. However, no matter how hard Kieran cultivates, the ultimate power that can be exerted is at most 30% of Kieran's arm. What I'm talking about is that Kieran can only launch Kieran's arm once in a lifetime. That will be a full blow, a blow that will show the full attack power of Kieran's arm. Such a blow indeed has the power to break the sky. From the birth of Kieran to the present, except within the Kieran clan, no other mythological beasts, magical beasts, or ferocious beasts, no matter what level of cultivation, can resist the strongest blow of Kieran's arm. Because of this, even if there are ancient beasts that are stronger than Kieran, they will not dare to provoke Kieran. What they are afraid of is this Kieran's arm. There can only be one blow in a lifetime. Then it won't be a mutual destruction, right? Chiyu did not forget the word behind Kieran's powerful strength because of Siege's description of it. Siege said with some bitterness, you can say that, because Kieran's arm is Kieran's horn. If Kieran's horn is broken, then Kieran will have to pay the price with his life. And the real perfect blow of Kieran's arm is at the cost of turning into a horn. The horned arm shone brilliantly, and the price of this perfect strike was the precious life of Qilin. Perhaps this was the limitation of strength. Since the birth of Kieran, the number of Kieran clan has never exceeded a single digit. There is always a price to pay for strength. And the perfect attack of Kieran's arm is naturally the most taboo method of mutual destruction in the Kieran clan. Unless it is a last resort, it will never be used. Today, you should have seen the power of Kieran's arm, but if I tell you that the attack only shows 1% of the power of Kieran's arm, what would you think? 1%? Chiyu stuttered. Probably not yet. I said, Kieran's arm is Kieran's strongest ability. Siege's voice was a little emotional. Chiyu said, doubtfully, since Kieran's arm is so strong, why didn't I hear Master Zagre mention it? And I heard that Kieran's previous generations were very weak and needed the protection of the Zodiac warriors. Is it because the blood of Kieran has been passed down in our human body that it has lost the ability of Kieran's arm? No, of course not. Due to the difficulty of reproduction of pure-blooded Kieran, the Kieran clan was on the verge of extinction in the later period of the ancient Almighty Beast era. In order to let the Kieran clan continue, Kieran decided to choose a race and pass down their pure-blooded bloodline. And the final result of the choice was the human race. Because the human race has a brain that is smarter than any other race, they have more creativity than any other race, although the human race was still very weak at that time. However, the king of Kieran saw the development of the human race. As it turns out, the king of Kieran's vision is far-sighted. Now, our world completely belongs to you humans. Since the human race has inherited Kieran's pure-blooded bloodline, they will naturally have all of Kieran's abilities. The ascending Qilin technique imparted to you by the girl who inherited the dragon's bloodline was indeed the cultivation method of the Qilin. Even the ascending cloud technique, which the Zodiac warriors used to cultivate and fuse their inherited bloodline, was also derived from the ascending Qilin technique. However, the ascending Qilin technique that was passed down was only the cultivation method. The method to use it and trigger the bloodline fusion was lost. For the Zodiac warriors, this naturally doesn't affect them because they already have their own abilities. Kirin's cultivation method only allows them to make better use of their abilities. However, for Kirin, who has inherited Kirin's bloodline, it is naturally impossible to display the true strength of Kirin without the method to use its abilities and trigger the bloodline fusion. Chiyu's heart became hot. At this time, even the Sarira bead could not calm his agitated mood. Do you mean that you have these two cultivation methods? Xieji's voice became a little strange. It smiled and said, "No, I don't have these two cultivation methods. Although I have the bloodline of Kirin, as the most precious cultivation method of the Kirin clan, how can I have it? Only the real Kirin is likely to remember the real cultivation method." Qiyu said, "Since you don't have it, what's the use of telling me this?" Xieji said, "Although I don't have it, there is someone who does." Qiyu was stunned and said, "Who is it? Don't tell me there really is a Qilin left in this world." Xieji said, "Yes, only Kirin has it. I said this cultivation method of the real Kirin. Only the real Kirin can have it." Qiyu frowned and said, "Since there is a real Kirin in this world, what's the use of me as a guardian?" "Idiot, the Kirin I'm talking about is you," Xieji said snappily. Qiyu was stunned and said, "What? You said I have this cultivation method? How is this possible?" Xieji said, "You do have this cultivation method. Only the real Kirin can have it. It is in your bloodline. Only in your bloodline can the ancient cultivation method be passed down. You humans are ridiculous. They actually think that Kirin's cultivation speed is slower than them. Well, I felt this memory from your consciousness. I couldn't help but feel ashamed of your ignorance. The reason why Kirin can become the king of the mythological beasts and continue to rule the mythological beasts in the ancient era is because of Kirin's arm. At the same time, Kirin also has a cultivation speed that far exceeds other ancient mythological beasts. Let me ask you a simple question. Do you think it is strange that the ancient mythological beasts can survive to this day?" Qiyu said, "What is strange about this? The life of you monsters is almost infinite." "No, you are wrong. This world is balanced. It is impossible for anyone to have eternal life and live until today. The older the mythological beasts, magical beasts, and ominous beasts, the greater the price they have to pay. Only by continuous cultivation and passing through one bottle opening after another can it be possible to extend their life. As we break through the bottleneck one after another, we will be able to possess even greater strength. But it is extremely difficult to break through the bottle opening. We must pay a lot of effort and suffer a lot of pain. Therefore, age can be said to be the standard to measure the strength of the ancient mythological beasts. However, there is an exception. Chapter 18. Yes, it's Kirin. No matter what realm Kirin cultivated to, its lifespan could not exceed 1,500 years. This was the root cause of Kirin's extinction. However, in a limited 1,500 years of Kirin, as long as you work a little harder and concentrate on cultivation according to Kirin's cultivation method, you can become a super strong person in up to 500 years. It can even be comparable to a 10,000-year-old beast. In other words, Kirin's cultivation speed is 20 times that of other ancient beasts. The bloodline inherited by your Zodiac companions is actually passed down from the ancient beasts. They can become strong through cultivation. As the inheritor of the mythological Beast King, why can't you? Qiyu is overjoyed. So, if I practice according to the real cultivation method, I can become a master in a short time. Xieji said, "There is one thing I want to warn you in advance. It can be said to remind you. You have to remember the truth that the tallest tree in the forest will be cut down by the wind. Even if you become stronger in the future, you have to hide it as much as possible. Unless necessary, don't show it in front of others. Only by letting others underestimate you can you survive better or achieve your own goals more easily. Do you understand? Chiyu smiled and said, I understand. What you mean is to only say 30% of the truth to people you meet. Don't throw away all your heart, right? I like to eat tigers mixed with pigs. Xieji smiled and said, It's good that you understand. Today, I help you to arouse the original power of Kirin's arm in Kirin's bloodline. I had no choice. Kirin's dignity cannot be violated. However, this situation can only happen once. In the future, you have to rely on yourself. Now, do you feel that your thundercloud force has disappeared? That's because Kirin's arm overdrew the energy in your body. It will take at least a month to recover. Of course, if you practice according to the right cultivation method, this time will be much shorter. If you want to really use Kirin's arm and the 9 words incantation, you have to put in more effort. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Didn't you ask why I ran into your body? I can answer you now. Why? Just because I inherited King Kirin's bloodline? You could say that, but that's not entirely true. Because you inherited the most powerful bloodline in the Kirin clan, the Kirin King's bloodline contains an extremely thick Kirin's origin power. In this origin power, there's also some of the Kirin King's consciousness left behind. That day, after I discovered your Kirin bloodline, I used my own bloodline as a guide to draw out King Kirin's remaining consciousness. With King Kirin's permission, I became your shadow. Therefore, I am now your servant. To be able to become the shadow of King Kirin was what all Xie looked forward to the most. Because when King Kirin became really powerful, as King Kirin's shadow, he could change from an impure Xie to a pure-blooded Kirin, and thus rise to the top of the Kirin clan. You don't have to worry about King Kirin's consciousness. His last consciousness could only tell me some things. Now, it has completely dissipated. King Kirin's bloodline can now be said to belong to you alone. A strange feeling suddenly appeared in Chiyu's heart. It was as if an abnormally warm emotion filled his body, just like a father comforting his son. He had never had any relatives since he was young, and this sudden feeling caused his heart to tremble. This was the first time he felt that the Qilin bloodline that he had inherited truly existed. The aura that gave him this fatherly feeling should have been left behind by the Qilin king. It is my honor to be the heir of King Kirin. Brother Xieji, thank you for telling me this. What about the shadow? If you become my shadow, how will it affect you and me? Xieji seemed to feel the emotional changes in Qiyu. Becoming your shadow is equivalent to sealing myself in your body. My aura, bloodline, and ability will be subtly influenced by your pure Kirin bloodline. Therefore, I can't help you fight against the enemy, nor can I be your guardian. However, by becoming your shadow, I can also enter your inner world and understand what has happened to you in the past. Although I only have one chance to understand you, this is already enough for me. After understanding you, I can impart the knowledge recorded in my heart to you based on your personality and physical condition. I can assist you in your cultivation and give you pointers on cultivation abilities and techniques. Under special conditions, I can even stimulate your Qilin bloodline and help you use the true power of a Qilin. Kirin was weak when he was born to become strong after growing up. With the guidance of the shadow, it will inevitably play a role of twice the result with half the effort. It can be said that you and I are of one mind. For you and me, it will be of great benefit. My master, I have explained the ins and outs clearly. Do you still have any questions? Qiyu shook his head. Thank you, Brother Xieji. I think I will become a qualified Kirin. Now, I want to ask you to start teaching me the real method of cultivation. I want to make myself stronger as soon as possible. As Kirin, I don't want anyone to look at me like Jida. I want to become a real strong person. Good. Xieji roared excitedly in Chiyu's heart. My words are not in vain. Then let's start now. Take off your shirt. Qiyu took off his shirt, revealing his shoulders that were much wider than before. The real method of cultivation needs you to feel it yourself. When you have a mistake in your cultivation, I will give you advice. You concentrate. Next, I will help you stimulate the blood of Kirin so that you can feel the mystery of the method of cultivation. This is something that only you can see. As soon as the voice fell, a scorching stream of air rose from the dantian in Chiyu's lower abdomen and rushed directly to Chi-Yu's brain in a straight line. With the impact of the hot stream, the temperature of Chi-Yu's body rose sharply. He vaguely heard a low roar. Then, Kirin appeared on his chest. The huge Kirin pattern from his chest to his back, from illusion to reality, clearly appeared on his skin. It had a black body, silver hair, and a horn with black and silver colors entangled. It was full of invisible dominance. The four magic clouds behind Kirin moved this time. The four magic clouds, which belonged to thunder, fire, water, and wind, respectively, appeared under Kirin's four limbs. Kirin stepped on the four clouds, and a layer of black and silver light gradually enveloped Chi-Yu's body. The eyes of the Kirin pattern lit up. The black and silver light flashed and disappeared. At this moment, Chi-Yu lost his perception of the outside world. He was surprised to find that he seemed to have entered another place. What appeared in front of him was a three-dimensional and transparent Kirin's body. The huge Kirin's body rotated slowly. Although it was transparent, Chi-Yu could see that the Kirin in front of him was exactly the same as the image on his body. Something strange happened. The ascending Qilin technique in Chi-Yu's memory suddenly surged in his mind. Then, on the transparent Kirin's body, starting from the feet, four colors of purple, red, blue, and green appeared at the same time. The light did not rise as a whole, but turned into a state of silk threads, slowly climbing up along Kirin's limbs. The silk threads were not very complicated, but when the four colors of light gradually moved to Kirin's body, the four kinds of light threads intertwined with each other and gradually became chaotic. Chi-Yu was confused as he watched. When the light of the four colors of silk threads covered Kirin's body, it returned to the starting point. Kirin's figure gradually dimmed. Kirin, who was originally on all fours, stood up and turned into a human form. When he looked closely, Chi-Yu found that it was actually himself. The four colors of silk threads appeared again, and the 8 extraordinary meridians of the human body gradually appeared. The 8 extraordinary meridians that appeared were exactly the same as what was recorded in the ascending Qilin technique. Just when Chi-Yu was feeling strange, the human body gradually returned to the form of Kirin. The four colors of silk threads appeared again, but the 8 extraordinary meridians that appeared in the human body did not disappear. At this moment, Chi-Yu suddenly had a glimmer of understanding because he remembered what Xie had said. The ascending Qilin technique was indeed the cultivation method of Kirin. The human body and Kirin that alternated in front of him should be the method of the ascending Qilin technique and Kirin's bloodline fusion. Only by mastering this method of fusion could he stimulate the bloodline of Kirin in his body and cultivate according to the method of the ascending Qilin technique. The ascending Qilin technique was actually not a separate cultivation method. It was a method that stimulated the energy in Kirin's bloodline and was driven by the energy of the bloodline to carry out the cultivation method. After figuring this out, Chi-Yu suddenly felt that his heart was suddenly clear. The seemingly chaotic meridians in front of him were no longer so untraceable. In the operation of the four colors of energy, it seemed to contain the truth of heaven and earth. Chi-Yu's mind was attracted by this truth and could not extricate itself. Xieji's voice sounded again. What you see now is something that only you can see, but I can feel from your heart that you have figured something out. As your shadow, my ability can only let you see this scene 3 times. Therefore, you must firmly remember these within 3 times, and then you can start to cultivate. Today is the first time. Next, I will start a change. The method of using Kirin's ability is as important as the method of cultivation. You have to watch carefully. The constantly changing human figure and Kirin form in front of Chi-Yu slowly disappeared. Then, 9 big words appeared in front of Chi-Yu out of thin air. It was the 9 secret words of Lin, Bing, Do, Zhe, Jia, Zhen, Lai, Qian, and Xing. Then, another human figure appeared, but this time, the human figure was no longer static. The 9 big words were enlarged one by one, and when each word was enlarged, the human figure would have different changes. Even the meridians in the body were changing. Looking at everything in front of him, Chiyu did not dare to have the slightest slack. Although he did not fully understand, he tried to firmly remember these in his heart. Immersed in the constantly flashing lights and shadows, Chiyu did not know how long it took. When these lights and shadows finally disappeared, Xieji's voice sounded again. Everything in front of him returned to normal. What Chiyu saw was still his empty space. As the king of Kirin, Ink Kirin, in addition to the abilities I have mentioned, you also have two abilities that other Kirin cannot match. One is your self-healing ability. The Kirin clan's healing ability is very strong, and Ink Kirin is several times stronger than ordinary Kirin. In a sense, Ink Kirin is almost impossible to kill. Of course, this is after you have the real ability of Ink Kirin. Even now, your own healing ability is extremely strong after the real Kirin's blood is activated. The best part of this super healing ability is reflected in the application of Kirin's arm. I have already described the attack of Kirin's arm to you. Ordinary Kirin, the real Kirin's arm, can only be used once in their life, because once they release all the energy of Kirin's horn, the horn will disappear and their life will come to an end. However, Ink Kirin is an exception among all Kirin. With the super healing ability, although using the ultimate Kirin's arm will make Ink Kirin extremely weak, it will not die. Within a certain period of time, Ink Kirin's horn can be regenerated. Chiyu's whole body trembled, and he said in amazement, that is to say, no matter how strong the enemy Ink Kirin faces, as long as I release the ultimate Kirin's arm, I can kill the enemy completely, and my horn can also grow. Then, wouldn't I be invincible in the world? Why would I still need to practice? Xieji said, of course not. This world is a balanced world. Although the Ink Qilin was an expert among experts, it also had its own restraining effect. For people like you, who don't even have the basic abilities of Kirin, using the ultimate Kirin's arm can regenerate a horn, but it will take 500 years. You have to know that Kirin's lifespan is only about 1,500 years. The more powerful the Black Qilin was, the less time it would take for its horn to recover. In other words, compared to ordinary Kirin, after you use the ultimate Kirin's arm, the only difference is that you will not die. During the long period of time when you are weak, because all this self-healing ability is in Kirin's horn, your body will become very fragile, and you may be killed by creatures that are much weaker than you at any time. Therefore, whether it is Kirin or Kirin King, they will not easily use their Kirin's arm unless it is absolutely necessary. You must remember this. Although Chi was a little disappointed, he had to admit that this was a balance of nature. He nodded and said, what is the other special ability of Ink Kirin? Xieji said, the other special ability is very mysterious. I only know it exists, but I don't know where it is manifested. After the birth of every Qilin king, there will always be this special ability. As far as I know, it seems that every generation of Qilin king will have a different special ability in this aspect. Only when you gradually become stronger through cultivation will you be able to experience it for yourself. Qi took a deep breath and said, so that's how it is. It seems that everything depends on my own efforts. Xieji said, you can't be too hasty in your practice. You have the blood of Kirin, which is equivalent to having the best qualifications that humans in the world can have. As long as you progress step by step, you will inevitably become the real king of those Zodiac guardian gods. I'm going to sleep. In the future, unless you wake me up when you need me, I will not wake up. Do you need me to help you trigger the practice method in the blood next time you practice? Chiyu shook his head and said, there's no need for now. If I watch it 3 times in a row, I might have a deeper impression of it. However, no matter how deep my memory is, if I don't understand it, there will definitely be some loopholes. I want to cultivate for a period of time first, and when I encounter some confusion or questions during my cultivation, I will watch it a second time. This way, I will watch it with questions in mind. I believe that not only will my memory be deeper, I will also gain more from it. Xieji praised. You are now working hard in the direction of Kirin. Goodbye, my master. Chi was lost in thought. He did not change his focus because of Xieji's departure. Now his mind was full of the previous dream-like memories. He searched these memories, sorted out the seemingly chaotic network, and thought about how he should practice. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking on the door woke Chi-Yu from his contemplation. He found that the sky outside was already bright. Chi-Yu, you should go to class today. Ming Ming's voice came from outside the door. Chi-Yu jumped out of bed. His head suddenly felt a little dizzy, and he felt groggy. Okay, I will come out now. He did not sleep last night, and most of the time was spent thinking and remembering. For a person who rarely thought, it was really a big burden. Putting on the clothes he had worn yesterday, Chi-Yu used all his strength to stretch his body before walking out of his room. The moment he stepped out, he smelled a fragrant aroma. Twitching his nose, he saw that a sumptuous breakfast had already been laid out on the table in the hall. Su Qing and Shunyan were already sitting there eating. Shunyan smiled and said, "Come and eat together." Chi-Yu quickly shook his head and said, "Forget it. I will go to the cafeteria to eat." As he said that, he quickly went to the bathroom to wash his face, took his books, and left the dormitory. Looking at the figure of Chi-Yu leaving, Su Qing snorted and said, "What a coward. This guy doesn't even dare to eat with us." Shunyan said, "He looks quite honest. Was he scared by that treaty of yours yesterday?" Su Qing chuckled and said, "God knows he deserves it. Who asked him to come to our female dormitory to live?" "What treaty?" Ming Ming came out of the room and sat at the table and ate without any politeness. Su Qing told them about the treaty she wrote with Chi-Yu yesterday. The three girls looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. However, the meaning of their laughter was different. Ming Ming was laughing in her heart. Her two roommates actually treated Chi-Yu as an honest person. She was afraid that they would be in trouble in the future. After eating breakfast, Chi-Yu asked a few students in Qingbei University. Only then did he find the place where the philosophy class was held in this huge campus. The time that Ming Ming called him was very suitable. When he arrived at the class, he wasn't late. Because he was tired from thinking last night, today Chi-Yu didn't scan the classroom to see if there were any beauties. He casually found a seat at the back and sat down. He casually placed a book on the table and fell asleep. This classroom was very big, but there weren't many students. The lecture hall that could accommodate 200 students only had 30 students. After all, the number of people who chose the philosophy department was still very small. The arrival of this unfamiliar student, Chi-Yu, didn't attract the attention of others. After all, his appearance couldn't be said to be handsome, and there wasn't anything that was enough to attract people. The other students who had already arrived at the classroom were still chatting in low voices. No one paid attention to this guy, who fell asleep as soon as he entered the classroom. The bell rang. When a 50-something-year-old male teacher walked in from outside, the classroom immediately became much quieter. Unfortunately, this bell that wasn't soft still didn't wake up Chi-Yu, who had already fallen asleep. Sleeping after eating is absolutely a wonderful thing. The curriculum of a university wasn't as rigid as it was in middle school. It wasn't as strict either. The teacher taught attentively. As for whether the students learned or not, the teacher generally didn't care much. After all, if you didn't study hard, it would be impossible to obtain enough credits to graduate. In a famous university like Qingbei, the quality of the students was generally very high. The teachers were also a bit more strict than other universities. The class began. The first 20 minutes were no different from usual. In the class, the teacher with the surname Li used his usual serious voice to teach the classical philosophy class. Just after 20 minutes had passed, an incongruous voice suddenly appeared in the class. Humph, puff, humph, puff. A clear snoring sound came from the back of the classroom. All the students were stunned for a moment. Immediately after, a burst of laughter came from the classroom. After all, Chi-Yu's snoring was really too standard. The cadence, the high and low notes were extremely wonderful. Especially that last blow, it was absolutely top-notch. Teacher Li's serious face immediately changed color. He hadn't encountered such a thing in many years. Being laughed at by the students was something that no teacher could tolerate. Almost without any hesitation, he threw the eraser in his hand. Worthy of being surnamed Li. This teacher Li had gloriously inherited the traditional skills of Little Li Flying Dagger. Right now, he wasn't alone. At this moment, literally flying dagger's soul was attached to his body. With the accuracy displayed, the eraser drew a beautiful parabola with a whistling sound and went straight for the owner of the snoring. Bang! Without deviation, without a bit more or less, the eraser immediately smashed onto Chiyu's head. F*CK. Fuck, who the F*CK is courting death. Almost subconsciously, Chiyu stood up fiercely with a face full of anger. No matter who it was, being woken up while sleeping soundly would definitely not be happy. What's more, Chiyu had always hated people disturbing his sleep. His ruffian nature was instantly displayed. When he stood up, he gradually became clear-headed. Somewhat at a loss, he looked at the lifeless gazes of the other students and the angry teacher, Lee, who was trembling. Only then did he remember that he was in class. You. The teacher was already so angry that he couldn't speak. Chiyu scratched his head that was smashed and said awkwardly, Teacher, I'm not scolding you. Just treat it as my fart. Teacher Lee looked at Chiyu's expression of a dead pig, not afraid of boiling water, and his entire body couldn't help but tremble. As a famous professor of Qingbei University's philosophy department, this was the first time he was scolded like this in class. Get out of here and stand outside as punishment. After I finish class, I'll take you to the academic affairs office to deal with your problem. Chiyu shrugged his shoulders, picked up his book, and walked out without any reluctance to leave. He was too lazy to defend himself. Moreover, sleeping in class and scolding the teacher was indeed his fault. He more or less knew how to respect his teacher. When Chiyu just walked out of the classroom, he faintly heard that teacher Lee say, "Scum. This kind of scum can actually enter Qingbei. This kind of scum who casually scolds people should." The little bit of guilt in his heart immediately disappeared after hearing these words. A cold light flashed through his eyes. He heavily closed the classroom door and leaned against the wall of the corridor. Scum, humph, I'm the scum of society. This teacher's quality doesn't seem to be much higher than mine. Thinking to hear, Chiyu curled his lips. With the sleepiness from before, he leaned against the wall of the corridor and continued to have his big dream. Chiyu's ability to sleep was indeed not bad. Although he still couldn't reach the stage where he could sleep while walking, he had already mastered the secret art of sleeping while standing when he was in middle school. Not knowing how much time had passed, he suddenly felt someone pat his shoulder, causing him to wake up from his sleep. Just as he was about to open his mouth to scold, he immediately thought that it might be that teacher. The words that were at the tip of his mouth were immediately swallowed back, and he opened his eyes. Different from what he imagined, in front of him was not the teacher who smashed him with an eraser, but a beautiful and familiar face. The person who appeared in front of Chiyu was the beauty he met when he first entered Qingbei school. At that time, he had intentionally knocked away her book. He didn't expect to meet her again here. The young girl's gaze fell on Chiyu's shoulder. Covering her mouth, she lightly laughed. You can really sleep. Why are you standing here? Chiyu followed the young girl's gaze and looked at his shoulder. He immediately felt a little awkward because there were obvious traces of saliva there. Clearly, it was left behind when he tilted his head to sleep. He helplessly shrugged his shoulders and said, I was chased out by the teacher. What else can I do other than sleep? Senior sister, don't tell me you're also in the philosophy department. Why aren't you attending class? The young girl lightly smiled. The elegant aura that her body emitted caused Chiyu's eyes to stare blankly. I'm not in the philosophy department. Other than the philosophy department, this school building also has a foreign language department. Don't you know that? I really don't know. I just entered the school yesterday. Qingbei is so big. I'm afraid that it will still take some time to figure it out. The young girl said, Then why are you standing outside as punishment? Today should be Teacher Lee's class. Chiyu snorted and said, Actually, it's nothing much. I'm just sleeping in class. He even said that he would bring me to the dean's office to deal with it. The young girl burst into laughter and said, Qingbei is one of the best schools in our Yanwang Republic. You must pay attention in class. Sleeping isn't something you should be doing at this time. Not knowing why, when he heard the young girl's words, Chiyu suddenly felt a sense of closeness in his heart. He subconsciously nodded his head. The young girl in front of him today was still dressed in fresh clothes. Her long hair was combed into a ponytail. She wore a loose top and blue jeans. She looked especially comfortable. There wasn't a single trace of makeup on her face. Her entire body was filled with the aura of youth. What attracted Chiyu the most was the pair of smooth and slender legs that were wrapped in her jeans. Although they weren't as exaggerated as Modi's, they were very harmonious with exquisite curves. It was a pity that her loose top was rather loose and covered her buttocks. Rubbing his nose awkwardly, he said, "I didn't do it on purpose. It's just that I didn't rest well last night. I unconsciously fell asleep before class. This is the second time we've met. Senior sister, can you tell me your name now?" The young girl made a pondering expression and said with a smile, "All right, I'm called Wenwei. What about you?" "I'm called Chiyu. I'm a new student in the philosophy department. Didn't I just come to report yesterday? I still have to thank senior sister for telling me the location of the dean's office. Qingbei is really too big." Chiyu was secretly delighted. This young girl, called Wenwei in front of him, was the gentle and cheerful type that he liked the most. Furthermore, she was also a super beauty. Relatively speaking, she was much easier to approach. In terms of appearance, among all the girls that he had seen in Qingbei University, only Ming Ming could compare to her. Thinking till here, although Chiyu wasn't willing to admit it, Hairyu's appearance still appeared in his mind. If it wasn't for her bad character, Hairyu's appearance and figure would probably be a little better than Ming Ming and the Wenwei in front of him. Wenwei's elegance and gentleness made Chiyu's heart beat a little faster. Looking at her unconsciously revealing an intoxicated expression, he didn't notice that behind Wenwei's gentle gaze, there was a trace of faint coldness. "I'll leave first. Class is about to end. You have to take the initiative to admit your mistake to the teacher. Don't do it again in the future." Just at this time, a person walked towards their direction from the corridor. Accurately speaking, it should be walking towards the classroom that Chiyu was in. Boss, why are you here?" The person who came was none other than Yin Xiaoi. Chiyu stared blankly for a moment and said, "I'm a student in the philosophy department. If I'm not here, where would I be? Don't tell me that you're also in the philosophy department." Yin Xiaoi helplessly shrugged his shoulders and said, "Aren't I in the philosophy department?" Although he was talking to Chiyu, his gaze fell on Wenwei. His eyes immediately lit up. "Hello, Teacher Wen. Are you going to class?" "Teacher Wen?" Chiyu stared blankly. His gaze fell on Wenwei. Chapter 19. Wenwei smiled faintly and said, "Hello, you seem to be late." Yin Xiaoi scratched his head and said, "I couldn't sleep well last night, so I woke up a bit late." The horn on his head was finally solved, and the identity of a Zodiac guardian warrior made him think for half the night. So how could he sleep well? "You're really a teacher?" Chiyu asked in surprise. Wenwei nodded. "Then why didn't you explain when I called you senior sister?" Chiyu suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart. He didn't know why, but the first time he met Wenwei, and the second time today, made his heart palpitate. Wenwei smiled and said, "You didn't call me wrong. Why should I explain? I'm a graduate of Qingbei University and also a master's student there. You calling me senior sister is naturally correct." The loud bell signaling the end of class rang, and the originally quiet corridor suddenly became lively. The classroom door opened, and the old teacher walked out with a gloomy face. When he saw Yin Xiaoi at the door, his face immediately darkened. "Student Xiaoi, you're late. I hope this is the last time. If you do it again, I'll give you a warning." Yin Xiaoi hurriedly said, "I'm sorry, Teacher Li. I know I was wrong. I'll pay attention next time. Actually, I like your class the most. Among all the professors in the philosophy department, I'm most interested in your class." Teacher Li's face immediately became better after being praised by him. "Hello, Teacher Li." Wenwei flashed out from Yin Xiaoi's side and nodded to Teacher Li. Seeing her, Teacher Li's face immediately melted like an iceberg and was filled with a smile. "So it's Teacher Wen." As he said that, his eyes subconsciously swept over Wenwei's chest. "Beast." Chiyu and Yin Xiaoi cursed in their hearts at the same time. Wenwei smiled and said, "I'm about to go to class and just happened to pass by. I heard from Chiyu that you punished him for sleeping in class. He just came to school and doesn't know the rules. Don't be angry with him. Just tell him to be careful next time." As she spoke, she gave Chiyu a look. Chi was not an idiot. Although he was unwilling, he still said, "I'm sorry, teacher. I won't sleep next time." Teacher Lee snorted and didn't even bother to look at Chi. He said, "Forget it. For Teacher Wen's sake, I'll let you off this time. If there's a next time, I'll let the Academic Affairs Office punish you. All right, you two can go in first." Chi glanced at Wen Wei, and Wen Wei nodded at him. Only then did he and Yin Xiaoyi enter the classroom. Vaguely, he heard Miss Lee say to Wen Wei in a very gentle tone, "Miss Wen, I'll treat you to dinner when you're free. There's a new Western restaurant in front of the school. It's pretty good." Chi Yu and Yin Xiaoyi looked at each other and saw the disdain in each other's eyes. The two of them unconsciously laughed. They walked to the back of the classroom and found a seat next to each other. Now that most of the students were out, there weren't many people in the classroom. Chi Yu said unhappily, "Isn't this considered enemies on a narrow road?" Yin Xiaoyi said with a smile, "If it was before yesterday, it would definitely be, but not now." "Boss, why did you choose the philosophy department? Didn't anyone tell you that the philosophy department has the worst future?" Chi Yu asked in return, "What about you? Why did you choose the philosophy department?" Yin Xiaoyi laughed and said in a low voice, "Of course it's to get a diploma. Generally speaking, the philosophy department has the least courses. My father brought me here, so of course I have to choose an easy subject. This way, I can free up a lot of time to promote the growth of the school's beauties. It's not bad to become a teacher after graduation. The students in the school are changing. If I become a teacher, I will have a lot of opportunities to pick up girls in the future." Chi Yu laughed and said, "Then aren't you the legendary animal teacher?" Yin Xiaoyi jumped in fright and hurriedly looked around. "Boss, can you lower your voice? I have a very good reputation in the school." Chi Yu said, "It seems that not only are we not enemies on a narrow road, but great minds think alike. Your thoughts are exactly the same as mine. Sigh, I thought I was the only smart person. Oh, right, you came to the school earlier than me. Is that Wen Wei really a teacher?" Until now, he still didn't want to believe it was true. Yin Xiaoyi looked at Chi Yu with some surprise. "Boss, Earth is very dangerous. You should go back to Mars. F*CKU, cut the crap and tell me." Chi Yu patted Yin Xiaoyi's shoulder hard. Yin Xiaoyi cried out in pain and said, "Can you be gentler? Are you addicted to hitting me? I'll tell you, okay? The question you just asked is too weird. Wen Wei is the most popular woman in the school. You don't even know her background. Shouldn't you go back to Mars? She is one of the two beauties of Tsinghua University. The other one is your Ming Ming." Chi Yu was very satisfied with the words Ming Ming. He quickly pinched Yin Xiaoyi's shoulder twice and said, "Didn't I just arrive at the school? Hurry up and tell me." Yin Xiaoyi said, "Wen Wei is one of the youngest female teachers in our school. She was admitted to Tsinghua University as the top scholar in the city. She studied in the foreign languages department. After graduation, she was directly sent to our school's postgraduate program. After the postgraduate program, with her knowledge, there were a lot of multinational companies that wanted to hire her. But for some reason, she rejected all the offers and chose to stay in Tsinghua University as an ordinary foreign language teacher. Therefore, she has always occupied the position of Tsinghua University's #1 beauty. This year, after Ming Ming entered the school, she became a threat. Teacher Wen's identity is a mystery. No one has ever seen her family, and she has no friends. Don't look at how gentle she looks on the surface. In fact, she is famous for being warm on the outside but cold on the inside. She can invisibly push people 1,000 miles away. Don't know how many male compatriots who chased after her were tactfully rejected, but no one said anything bad about her. In Tsinghua University, no matter in the eyes of students or teachers, she is a heaven's proud daughter." "Boss, how do you know her?" Chi Yu took a deep breath. After listening to Yin Xiaoyi's introduction, he couldn't help but be more curious about Wen Wei. She doesn't have friends? How could that be? Looking at her gentle appearance, she should have a lot of friends. Yin Xiaoyi smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know about this. I once specially looked for people to inquire about her, but there wasn't any valuable information. I didn't even find out what she likes. She treats everyone very well, as if everyone is her friend. But there isn't a single person who dares to say that they understand her. It's really strange. Ming Ming is a student in her class. After you go back, you can ask Ming Ming. I heard that Ming Ming's relationship with her is not bad. Maybe you can ask something. Chi Yu looked at Yin Xiaoyi vigilantly and said, You can't be interested in Wen Wei, right? Yin Xiaoyi smiled and said, Such a beauty. I'm afraid any man will be interested in her. However, boss, you can rest assured. Although I've always thought that I am very handsome, I don't have any confidence in this kind of unfathomable beauty. If you have the ability, you can do it yourself. It can also be considered as fighting for us men. However, I estimate that the hope is very small. A light flashed in Chi Yu's eyes. Small hope doesn't mean no hope. Maybe there are too many handsome guys chasing after her. What if I, who has temperament, can move her heart? Temperament. Yin Xiaoyi almost choked on his own saliva. He coughed twice and said, Yes, you have temperament. Then you better pray for the best. Sleep, sleep. After saying that, he directly lied down on the table. Chi Yu was stunned for a moment and said, You are actually going to sleep in class? The next class is probably going to start soon. Yin Xiaoyi smiled and said, You are unlucky. I think in the whole school, only that guy oldly hates students sleeping. The other teachers rarely care about this. As long as you don't disturb the order of the class, those professors are too lazy to control you. That wretched guy oldly will only be gentle with beautiful girls. He is unspeakably strict with us students. All right, I'm going to sleep. Chi Yu cursed in his heart. I'm going to sleep too. There were indeed few classes in the philosophy department. For example, today there was only a class in the morning. During the morning class, Chi Yu only heard a few words from Teacher Li. The rest of the time was spent sleeping. After lunch, Chi Yu directly went back to the dormitory. Last night, he just learned the real Kirin's cultivation method. He was still excited and wanted to quickly practice it to see the effect. Walking to the door of the dormitory, Chi Yu suddenly felt a warmth in his heart. He thought that if he could see Su Qing and Shen Yun, the two beauties, as a lesbian again, it would be wonderful. While thinking, he gently opened the door with the key, trying not to make a sound. However, this time, Chi Yu was disappointed. There was not even a shadow in the dormitory. The three beauties were not there. Just as he was about to return to his room, he suddenly saw a white thing fluttering in the wind on the balcony outside the living room. Under the influence of curiosity, he subconsciously walked over. When Chi Yu saw what was on the balcony, his first action was to cover his nose. In fact, if it was another person, as long as it was a man, his action would be similar. After all, when a normal man, and a virgin at that, saw several pieces of lingerie exclusive to women, he would probably feel his blood boil. Once it came out of his nose, he would probably die from excessive blood loss. On the balcony, there were a few white panties fluttering in the wind. There were also two bras. No matter who it was, it would inevitably cause Chi Yu's blood to boil. Especially those panties were actually thongs. It looked too tempting. Just as Chi Yu was hesitating whether to take a closer look or not, the sound of the door opening suddenly sounded. Thieves usually had a guilty conscience. Although Chi Yu wasn't really a thief, he was still shocked and hurriedly ran back to his room. Just as Chi Yu walked to the door of his room, the three beauties had already arrived in the living room. Su Qing saw Chi Yu at a glance. Hey, you're back quite early. Chi Yu struggled to keep calm. Yes, I came back after eating. You didn't eat in the dormitory. Ming Ming said there was a new Western restaurant at the school gate. We want to try it. We wanted to call you, but your philosophy department is too far away from our foreign languages department and Sister Yun's physics and thermodynamics department, so we didn't wait for you and went by ourselves. That restaurant is really good. Su Qing said it's really good. Shouldn't some new residents express their gratitude and invite us three beauties to find an opportunity to eat there again? Western food? Chi Yu was stunned for a moment. He thought to himself, that stupid thing is not enough to eat, and it's frighteningly expensive. If I really go there, I'm afraid my 1 month's relief money will be gone. He hurriedly pretended not to understand the meaning of Su Qing's words and said, What's so good about Western food? It's not as good as our Yinhuang's 5,000 years of food culture. I still prefer Yinhuang cuisine. Su Qing pursed her lips, and Shen Yun said, Did you hear the announcement when we passed by the school cafeteria on our way back? The school temporarily announced a new rule about the cafeteria, saying that staple food will no longer be provided for free in the future. It seems to be calculated by Caddy. Su Qing said with a smile, "Of course I heard it. I also know why there is such a rule. I heard that last night, a rice bucket went to the school cafeteria and ate more than 10 bowls of rice in one go. Moreover, it was a big lunchbox that weighed half a caddy. As a result, the school cafeteria was afraid of eating that much. The main reason was that many people saw him eat and felt that it was too delicious, so they ate a lot more. As a result, the number of staple food in the cafeteria greatly increased. That rice bucket is really strong. Think about it. It's really hard to imagine that a person can eat 5 or 6 caddies of staple food." Ming Ming giggled and said, "Could it be that he was the reincarnation of a hungry ghost?" Qing, isn't your gossip a little inaccurate? How can anyone eat so much?" Su Qing pouted and said, "How could that be? My source is very reliable. It's definitely true. I heard that he went again at noon today, and there were many people who also went to the cafeteria to eat with the intention of seeing a rice bucket. In the end, the staple food consumption at noon today was even more terrifying than last night, so the school issued a temporary rule." "Why? It's really the heavens that want me dead." Chiyu cried out in sorrow. F***CK. No wonder there were more people in the cafeteria at noon today. Ming Ming looked at Chiyu curiously. She seemed to suddenly think of something, and her eyes widened as she said, That rice bucket can't be you, right?" Chiyu said in grief and indignation. "What rice bucket? Qingbei is too unkind. Do I eat a lot? I only ate a total of 14 steamed buns at noon today, and the rules have actually changed. It's over. I won't even have enough to eat in the future." 3 beautiful women, 6 pairs of bright big eyes blankly fell on Chi Yu's flat stomach. They naturally knew how big the steamed buns at school were. They were big steamed buns that weighed half a caddy each. 14 of them was 7 caddies. A person eating 7 caddies of steamed buns. Was he still human? Chi Yu had a bitter face. "Don't look at me. I don't know why, but recently my appetite has increased, and I eat a lot more than before. Could it be that eating a lot is also a sin?" Su Qing's gaze turned to Ming Ming. "A rice bucket who can eat 7 caddies in one meal. You say he has congenital heart disease?" Ming Ming said with some embarrassment, "Eating and heart disease don't affect each other. Besides, I didn't know he could eat so much. Perhaps eating a lot is a kind of disease." As she said, she hurriedly winked at Chiyu, telling him to quickly return to his room. Chiyu was now completely immersed in the flying steamed buns and rice, and didn't notice Ming Ming's winking. He said with a bitter smile, it's over. My relief fund is definitely not enough to eat this time." "Relief fund? What relief fund?" Shen Yun asked curiously. Chiyu was stunned and hurriedly said, "Nothing. I'm going back to my room." He walked back to his room and closed the door. He really had to think of a way to solve the problem of eating, but he didn't want Shen Yun and Su Qing to know that he was living on the state's relief fund. Looking at the closed door, Shen Yun and Su Qing's curious gaze fell on Ming Ming. Ming Ming's heart moved and suddenly thought of a way to deal with it. She hurriedly said, "Cousin indeed relies on the relief fund to live. When he was very young, both his parents died, and he relied on the state's relief fund to survive. Originally, we all wanted to help him, but he has a stubborn temper. Apart from the state's subsidy, he didn't receive any help from his relatives, so naturally, he doesn't have much money. Eating in the school cafeteria, naturally, he can only eat staple food. There's no oil in his stomach, so it's normal to eat more staple food." Su Qing was stunned for a moment. No wonder he refused to eat in the dormitory. "I thought Sister Yun's food didn't attract him, so it was like this. He's so pitiful. How could I say that to him yesterday?" Shen Yun said, "Qing, what did you say to him yesterday?" Su Qing smiled bitterly. "I asked him to share the rent, and then I asked him to pay 500 yuan a month for food expenses. Later, he agreed to pay the rent, but he refused to eat with us. So it's so difficult for him. I thought he was Ming Ming's cousin, so his family should be rich. Moreover, his clothes are also branded." Ming Ming's face sank. "His clothes were just given to him by one of my sisters." If you saw what he used to wear, you wouldn't say that. Hearing Ming Ming's words, Su Qing suddenly thought of a poor child studying hard to get into a top university. She lowered her head and said, "I'm sorry, Ming Ming. I didn't know." Ming Ming frowned. "Qing, do you know how much Qiyu's monthly relief fund is? I heard from him that it should be around 600 yuan. After sharing the rent, I'm afraid he won't have much money left. Not to mention that he also smokes. In the past, he told me that sometimes there's no free food. Of course, we're roommates, so it's normal for you to ask him for food expenses. But how much can we eat in a month? It's more than enough for the three of us, and we don't even need to use it. If you ask him for 500 yuan, he naturally won't agree because he can't afford it." Speaking up to this point, Ming Ming became a little emotional. Let him eat in the dormitory in the future. I'll pay for his food expenses. Ming Ming, don't be angry. Qing, I was just joking. You didn't say that we didn't know that Qi Yu was in such a difficult situation. Xinyan saw that the atmosphere wasn't right and immediately tried to smooth things over. While the three women were outside, Qi Yu's face was full of smiles. Naturally, he wasn't smiling because Ming Ming said that she would pay for his food expenses, but because the three women misunderstood him. It seemed that Shun Yun and Su Qing had already treated him as a pitiful person. It was the right move to play the pity card, and it would be easier for him to get close to them in the future. While fantasizing about what might happen with the two women, Qiyu couldn't help but feel a little complacent as he puffed out a cloud of smoke. After smoking a cigarette, the noise outside had already disappeared. Only then did Qiyu remember that it was time for him to train. He pulled the curtains in the room and sat cross-legged on the bed. After sleeping in class for the whole morning, he was now much more energetic. Based on everything in his memory, he fumbled around and started Kirin's real training for the first time. Energy fluctuations gradually emerged from Qiyu's body. Among the Kirin skills that he barely remembered yesterday, he chose an intermediate skill as the first one to train. Every skill that Kirin had was inseparable from Thundercloud Force. Thundercloud Force was the foundation, and the skills were the way to use it. Therefore, no matter what, he had to start from the ascending Qila method. However, because he had the method to fuse Kirin's bloodline and Thundercloud Force, his training method was somewhat different from the previous inheritors of Kirin. When he really began to train, Qiyu was surprised to find that training was not as boring as he had imagined. During the process of training, he felt the constant changes in his body's bloodline and aura due to training, and the comfort brought by his body was actually very wonderful. Moreover, during the process of training, he could clearly feel that the Kirin aura in his body was extremely powerful. However, this aura was immersed in his own Kirin's bloodline. If he wanted to draw out this aura and fully use it, he needed to constantly train and integrate this Kirin aura with his own bloodline little by little. Only in this way could he truly master the profound meaning of Kirin. Another thing that made Qiyu excited was that during the process of training Ascending Qila method, his perception of the outside world would completely disappear. His consciousness would be immersed in a special space. His body was practicing Ascending Qila method, and his consciousness was pondering the training method and the characteristics of those Kirin skills. He asked Xieji why such a situation occurred, and Xieji's answer was very simple. This was not because he had the ability to multitask, but because when the body entered the correct state of training, the mind would be liberated and the body would be in a semi-dormant state. However, the spirit did not need to be. The awake spirit entered his own inner sea of consciousness because of the body's dormancy. In this case, thinking would not be disturbed by the outside world, and it was often more efficient than usual. Xiaoji was also very surprised. It was deeply shocked by the talent of Kirin. Before Qiyu officially began to train, it did not expect that Qiyu could find a real training method so quickly. Although it was a little rough, and although it was just the beginning, as a Kirin, a good start was definitely the key to success. When Qiyu woke up from the state of training, the sky outside had already darkened. He did not wake up from his own training, but because the knocking on the door had aroused his remaining consciousness in his body, so he stopped after completing a cloud cycle of training. "Who is it?" Qiyu asked. After an afternoon of training, He did not feel much except that his body was comfortable. Sieji's explanation was very simple. That day, he used some of the abilities of Kieran's arms, and it consumed too much of his energy. Even if he found the right training method, he had to first replenish the overdrawn Thundercloud Force before he could feel his 4 attributes of Thundercloud Force again. It's me. Surprisingly, the person who came was not Ming Ming, as Qiyu had imagined, but Su Qing's voice. Qiyu got out of bed. He did not take off his clothes when he was training. When he opened the door, he saw Su Qing standing awkwardly outside the door. Su Qing had changed her clothes. Her home clothes looked very loose, and the pink clothes brought her a bit of charm, making her original hot personality a lot more restrained. "What's the matter?" Su Qing glanced at Qiyu. She found that Qiyu's expression had not changed since noon. She could not help but secretly feel relieved. "Come and eat. Sister Yun is ready." Qiyu laughed in his heart, but on the surface he said calmly, "No need. I will go to the cafeteria to eat." Su Qing smiled a little proudly and said, "I knew you would say that, but don't you see what time it is now? The cafeteria has long been closed. When I came back from class in the afternoon, I saw that your room's curtains were still closed. I knew you were sleeping, so I deliberately didn't wake you up. Let's see how you can refuse now. Come on, I don't want your food expenses." As she said, she unceremoniously pulled Qiyu's sleeves and pulled him to the living room. As soon as he came out of the room, Qiyu smelled a fragrance. He could not help but subconsciously swallow a mouthful of saliva. There were at least 7 or 8 dishes on the table in the living room. It was absolutely beautiful and fragrant. As for the taste, it could only be known after tasting it. There's also a big bamboo basket with more than 10 big steam buns. It seemed that they were bought from the school cafeteria. Ming Ming and Shunyan were already sitting there. Seeing Qiyu come out, Ming Ming hurriedly said, "Come and eat. In the future, you can eat in the dormitory. Don't go to the cafeteria." How can the cafeteria's big pot of rice compare to Sister Yun's cooking? As for your food expenses, of course, you still have to pay, but I can lend it to you first. When you start working in the future, you can return it to me. Looking at the eyes of the 3 women, Qiyu suddenly felt his heart warm up. He sighed inwardly. So the feeling of being cared for was so wonderful. The 3 women were wearing home clothes, but strangely, Qiyu did not have the slightest vulgar thought in his heart. He felt that this was not a dormitory, but a home, a warm home. Without saying anything, Qiyu sat down. "Thank you. I will definitely find a way to earn some money to pay for the food expenses as soon as possible." As a man, although the 3 women had good intentions, how could he do something like live off a woman? He had hands and feet. How could he really starve to death? Just as Qiyu was about to start eating, there was a sudden knock on the dormitory door. Su Qing exclaimed and said, "Who could it be? Usually, no one comes here." She had not yet sat down, so she went to open the door. Ah! With a mournful scream, Qiyu was so frightened that the steamed bun that he had just grabbed fell into the plate. The fastest to react was Ming Ming. She rushed to the door, with Qiyu following closely behind. Su Qing was so frightened that she almost fell to the ground. The person at the door was also shocked by her scream. A teasing voice sounded. "Am I that handsome? You don't have to be so surprised. Are you Master's wife?" When Qiyu saw the person at the door, he immediately frowned. The person who came was none other than Ming Ming's big brother, Jida. No wonder Su Qing had such a big reaction. It was already dark outside, and Jida was taller than the dormitory door. Suddenly seeing a guy with only half a head and an unusually strong body, anyone would be shocked. Today, Jida was wearing ordinary casual clothes, but even so, the invisible aura he emitted was still very shocking. Jida lowered his head and walked in. Su Qing was patting her chest and gasping for breath. "Who are you? Don't you know this is the female dormitory?" Jida was stunned. He looked at Qiyu next to him and said in surprise, "Master, isn't this Master's wife?" Qiyu found it funny and said, "Mother your head, what are you doing here?" Su Qing looked at Qiyu with an unfriendly expression. "Give me an explanation. I remember telling you yesterday that you're not allowed to bring outsiders here." Qiyu shrugged and said, "It has nothing to do with me. He is Ming Ming's big brother." Su Qing and Shun Yun, who was walking over, revealed a shocked expression. Su Qing murmured, "No way. How could Ming Ming have a brother who looks like a gorilla?" Hearing her words, Qiyu could not help but burst into laughter. Jida, who had been feeling good about himself, immediately put on a bitter expression. "That can't be, Beauty. I'm so handsome, tall and mighty. You actually said that I look like a gorilla?" Ming Ming giggled and said, "Let me introduce you. Brother, this is Su Qing, and this is Sister Xinyan. They are my roommates, not your master's wife. This is my brother, Jida." Jida sniffed and said, "How fragrant. You guys haven't started eating yet. It just so happens that I haven't eaten either." Qiyu was speechless. He thought to himself, could it be that the thickness of one's skin is proportional to the strength of one's body? At this time, Xinyan had already recovered from her shock. She smiled and said, "Since you are Ming Ming's brother, please come in." They returned to the hall. Jida didn't seem to know the meaning of politeness. He sat down on Qiyu's seat and looked at the table full of delicious food. He couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. "Brother, why are you here?" Ming Ming asked curiously. Jida said, "I came to see my master and also to see you." Su Qing finally understood what Jida meant by calling her master's wife. Her face turned red and she said, "He is your master? What did he teach you?" Jida was stunned for a moment and quickly said, "Of course it's martial arts. My master is very powerful." Chapter 20. Qiyu smiled bitterly. Jida's mind was definitely not as rough as his appearance. He glanced at his sister and hurriedly said, "There's no conflict. Although I'm master's cousin, I'm also his disciple. Who asked my master to be so powerful?" Qiyu was a bit depressed. "This is the school. Why did you come here? I don't need you to look at me. Moreover, I didn't agree to be your master." Jida smiled bitterly. "Master, please accept me. It's been a long time since I've met someone like you, who can make me so sincerely convinced." Qiyu snorted. "What's in it for me to accept you as my disciple? I can consider it if you pay some apprenticeship fees." Jida was stunned. "Apprenticeship fees? Master, how can an expert like you be tainted with the stench of money? I know. You must be joking with me." "Who's joking with you? Don't experts need to eat? Your master, can't eat my fill." Jida looked at the sumptuous dishes on the table and laughed. "Master, so you've already accepted me." Only then did Qiyu realize the mistake in his words. Picking up the bun from before, he forcefully took a bite and said, "It's not a big deal to accept you. My requirements aren't high either. I'll accept you as my apprentice fee of 3,000 a month. But don't expect me to teach you anything." Jida was stunned. Seeing that Qiyu didn't seem to be joking, he said, "I really have to pay 3,000 yuan a month. Well, with master's ability, it's worth it. I'll pay, okay? No matter what, my monthly allowance is tens of thousands." Qiyu was surprised. Soldiers nowadays have such a high salary? "I'll join the army." Jida said happily, "Good. I'm afraid any army would fight for a talent like master. Actually, the allowance isn't high. It's just that the army I'm in is a bit special, so it's a bit higher." Qiyu stretched out his right hand, pinched his thumb, index finger, and middle finger together and said, "Then give it to me. I'll pay for a month first." Ming Ming frowned and said, "Qiyu, why did you plot against my brother?" Qiyu said proudly, "How can this be called scheming? He insisted on taking me as his master, so why can't I take him as my disciple and ask for some salary? One of us is willing to take the hit, and the other is willing to take the hit." Jida said, Yes, I'll give it to you. However, master, I don't have it with me. I'll give it to you next time. Look, the dishes are getting cold. Let's eat first." Xinyan looked at them meaningfully and said, "That's right. Let's eat first." Qiyu finally showed everyone his super strength. Of course, it was on the dining table. Jida had always thought that he could eat a lot, but when he ate the second bun, he saw that Qiyu had already picked up the fifth bun. Qiyu didn't look like he was eating, but like he was fighting a war. His two hands and his mouth. Ever since Xinyan said that it was time to eat, he had never been idle. He didn't even have the time to talk, as if he was afraid that someone else would eat him. When all the food on the table was swept clean, Jida showed an expression of understanding and said, "Master, I finally know why you're asking me for my salary. With your appetite, An ordinary family wouldn't be able to feed you. Chiyu laughed and said, I'm not full yet. It's all because of you, you rice bucket. You stole a lot of my food. The three girls at the side were all speechless. Not full yet? It must be known that this master and disciple pair had cleaned at least 80% of the food on the table, and Chiyu had eaten 50 to 60%. That was definitely the amount of food that three people could eat. Shenyun and Su Qing began to clean up the dishes. Originally, Chiyu wanted to help, but he was stopped by Shenyun. She only said one sentence, but it made Chiyu's heart filled with emotion. Shenyun said, how could a man do this kind of work? It was a simple sentence, but it fully displayed the gentleness of a good wife and loving mother. In Chiyu's eyes, she immediately rose another level. Ming pulled Jida and called out to Chiyu to return to her room. Jida's sudden arrival filled her heart with doubt, but she couldn't ask too much in front of Shenyun and Su Qing. After all, whether it was Chiyu or Jida, their identities needed to be kept secret. Closing the door behind her, Ming leaned on the door and said to Jida, Brother, why are you here? Aren't you going to report to the Special Forces? Don't tell me that you're really here to see us. Jida said in a low voice, I've already reported. I'm really here to see you, but there's something else I need to tell you. Chiyu sat on the chair beside Ming's bed. What is it? Jida said, after I reported to the Special Forces, I thought about it carefully. Originally, I thought that my strength was enough, but after seeing Master's ability, I felt that I was still far from being an elite in the Special Forces. So I went back to discuss it with the old man. Originally, I didn't want to enter the Special Forces, but the old man didn't agree to it. However, Grandpa didn't agree. He still let me enter the Special Forces first. However, he also gave me a mission. It's also my only task in the Special Forces at present. You Guardians of the East are powerful and mysterious for our military. The task that the old man gave me is to be responsible for contacting you. Master, you're the king of the Zodiac Guardians, so I'll directly look for you in the future. A trace of understanding appeared in Ming's eyes, so that's how it is. But I've already told Dad that our Zodiac Guardians haven't been formed yet. Not only are we lacking in numbers, but our strength is also not enough to help the country. Jida said snappily, Not enough? Master, you can easily destroy me with a punch. If this kind of ability is not enough, how strong do you need? It's not like you don't know that your brother has a sapphire medal in the army. Chiyu's eyes lit up and said, Sapphire medal? Is it worth a lot of money? He was already considering whether or not he should get something good from his new disciple. Jida said proudly, The sapphire medal represents the highest honor of the Special Forces and is the representative of combat effectiveness. In the Army, the highest level is the diamond medal, followed by the ruby medal, and then the sapphire medal. With my strength, if it weren't for my young age and insufficient contributions, it would be enough to wear a ruby medal. Master, these three kinds of medals are the highest pride of us soldiers. Chi rolled his eyes and said, That's good. Give me one another day. I want a diamond one. Jida was stunned and said, Diamond? Master, a diamond medal is not an ordinary thing. It seems that there are only 3 people in the country who can have a diamond medal. All 3 of them had extremely mysterious identities. Not only had they made great contributions to the country, but they were also extreme grade powerhouses. It can be said that they are the national treasures of our Yanhuang Republic. However, with your strength, if you can contribute more to the country, you may really be able to get a diamond medal. At that time, your apprentice will also benefit from your glory. Chiyu said with a smile, Well, did you come here to tell us this? Now that you're done, you can go. Don't come here if you have nothing to do. As for us contributing to the country, we'll talk about it later. It wasn't that he didn't want to contribute to the country. On the contrary, Chiyu had received the country's aid since he was young, so he had deep feelings for his country. However, he was very clear about his current strength. Not to mention Jida, he was still far from Ming. Without strength, how could he contribute to the country? Jida said with some grievance, Master, it's not easy for me to come here. Can you teach me some secret arts or something? You are the first official master that I have acknowledged. Chiyu was stunned and couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. Teach you? I don't know who to teach me. Didn't I just say that it's not difficult to recognize you as my apprentice? However, I really have nothing to teach you. What I practice is not something you can learn. Kieran's secret art only belonged to Kieran. Without Kieran's bloodline, how could he practice it? Jita said with dissatisfaction. Master, a super master like you must know a lot of things. Do you think I'm not sincere enough? How about I go to get the money now and pay the tuition fee for you? Looking at Jita's eager face, Chiyu couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Just now, when he agreed to accept him as his apprentice, in fact, Chiyu just felt that it was fun, and it didn't seem to be a bad thing to accept such a powerful apprentice. However, when it came to teaching him secret arts, Chiyu was really in a dilemma. By the side, Mingming said, Brother, stop fooling around. Go back first. Chiyu really has nothing to teach you. Although I don't know what happened to his strength that day, I know very well that he is actually not strong. Can't you feel that there isn't a strong energy fluctuation in his body? Jita said stubbornly. That's because Master is already cultivated to the realm of returning to simplicity. People like us naturally can't feel it. Master, you really have to accept me as your apprentice. No matter what you teach me, I will definitely learn it seriously. I can also endure hardship. Listening to Jita's words, Chiyu's mind flashed, and he immediately thought of a way. All right, if that's the case, I will give you a clear path. I really don't have anything to teach you. However, I can find someone to teach you something. Jita said with some disappointment. Master, I only want to learn from you. If you find someone who isn't as good as me to teach me, then what's the point of learning? Chiyu chuckled and said, Not as good as you? I don't think so. He is my master. Could it be that your master's master is not as good as you? You should be proud that I invited your grandmaster to teach you the skills of another generation. Hearing this, Jita immediately became spirited. Grandmaster? Is Grandmaster a legendary hermit master? Chiyu shrugged his shoulders and said, Think what you want. Let's go. I will bring you there now. Don't bother me in the future. If you want to learn martial arts, go find your grandmaster directly. Ming, let's go together. Ming's eyes revealed a puzzled look. Hai Ryue had already conducted a sufficient investigation on Chiyu, so Ming naturally obtained detailed information on Chiyu from her. However, she didn't hear that he had a master. Her brother was not an ordinary person. It was not easy to find someone who could be his master. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but ask, Where do you want to go? Chiyu said, This place is where you brought me. It's where the Shiti Rex is. Ming widened her eyes and said, Don't tell me you want Sister Ryue to teach my brother. You should know that it's impossible. Also, I didn't hear that you have Sister Ryue as your master. Chiyu said with a smile, Of course not her. She wants to be my master? That's impossible. Let's go. You will know when we get there. When he thought of Hai Ryue's cold face, he felt an indescribable discomfort in his heart. Hai Ryue was the first beauty that made him feel disgusted. Doing what he said was always the style of soldier. Jita couldn't wait to go out with Chiyu and Ming. He still drove his off-road vehicle. Ming pointed the way, and Jita drove like it was flying towards the Dragon Qian courtyard. At this time, the sky was already dark. All kinds of neon lights were constantly flashing brilliantly on the streets of the capital. The streets were bustling with people. For many people who had a rich nightlife, the most exciting time of the day had just begun. After becoming a master, Chiyu's treatment suddenly improved a lot. This time, Jita took the initiative to let him be the front passenger seat, and Ming sat alone in the back. The off-road vehicle sped towards the destination. When they arrived at the Dragon Qian courtyard, Chiyu was already a little sleepy. Even he himself didn't know why. Ever since Master Zagru awakened his Kirin bloodline, he often felt sleepy, and his appetite had greatly increased. Although he ate a lot in the past, compared to now, it was really too different. For this matter, he asked Xieji. After thinking about it, Xieji told him that this situation might be because his Kirin bloodline needed a lot of rest and nutrients to fuse with his body. He had to eat more nutritious things to supplement his body. Unfortunately, Chi was very poor. It was good enough to eat his fill, let alone nutrition. Master, we're here. This place is very big. Well, The geographical location is not bad, and there seems to be radar fluctuations. How come I didn't know there was such a place before? The identity of the owner of this place must be extraordinary. As he spoke, Jita jumped out of the car, walked a few steps to the front door, and carefully looked around the door. At this time, his eyes had become extremely sharp. Chi-Yu and Ming-Ming came to Jita's side, only to hear him muttering to himself. This is a special defense door from lace, made with a special process of titanium alloy. My God, this owner is too rich. The price of titanium alloy is definitely not cheaper than gold. The signal here feels like the Ross United Nations Gauss radar. Even a fly can't escape its scanning. This radar is military equipment, and it's very advanced. Chi said impatiently, "All right, stop showing off. Ming-Ming, you come." Ming-Ming smiled slightly, stepped forward, and repeated what she did when she brought Chi-Yu here. The door opened, and the three of them walked into the Dragon Field courtyard. At this time, Hai Ryue had already walked out of the huge villa in the courtyard, Uncle Zhou beside her. Hai Ryue was still so beautiful, but the expression on her face had not changed. Perhaps because it was already night, she was wearing a simple casual outfit, and overall, she looked a little softer. The auras of the strong always attracted and repelled each other. As soon as Hai Ryue appeared, her eyes met Jita's. It was as if 4 bolts of cold lightning had collided in the air, and the two of them snorted at the same time. Hai Ryue's face paled, and Jita took half a step back, both showing a hint of surprise. Naturally, Ming-Ming knew Hai Ryue's temper. Afraid that she would misunderstand, she quickly ran forward and said, "Sister Ryue, this is my brother." Hai Ryue's temper was indeed the same as before. Hearing this, she could not help but say coldly, "Ming-Ming, don't you know that I don't welcome outsiders here?" Ming-Ming stuck out her tongue and said, "You can't blame me for this. It was Chi-Yu who insisted on bringing him here." Although Chi-Yu's strength was not that great, he was not afraid of Hai Ryue. He fiercely looked at her full chest and said, "It was me who brought him here. This is my new disciple, so he can be considered one of us. I brought him here to pay my respects to the ancestor, right? I didn't come here to look for you." Although Hai Ryue hated Chi-Yu's gaze, she was even more surprised by his words. "What did you say? He is your disciple?" It was no wonder that she was surprised. Just now, when she made eye contact with Jita, it was a process of testing each other. At their level of strength, their mental strength was very different from that of ordinary people. Their auras were condensed in their eyes, and although they did not actually fight, the contact of their auras was enough to roughly judge each other's strength. Hai Ryue felt Jita's strength, and she naturally knew what level Chi-Yu was at. She could not believe that Chi-Yu could actually accept such a disciple. "What? Can't I accept a disciple? Teacher Zhou, hello." As he spoke, Chi-Yu greeted Uncle Zhou, who was beside him, because Hai Ryue did not allow Uncle Zhou to teach Chi-Yu martial arts. Uncle Zhou did not allow Chi-Yu to call him master anymore. However, Chi-Yu insisted on calling him teacher Zhou to show his respect. His heart was full of goodwill towards this old man, and the purpose of today's visit was also to introduce Jita to his teacher Zhou. In fact, Chi-Yu did not know how strong Uncle Zhou was, but he had always felt that Uncle Zhou was not an ordinary person. There was an extremely strong aura hidden in his body. Perhaps this was the strength brought about by martial arts, or perhaps this was another kind of strength. And this unfathomable feeling made Chi-Yu full of confidence in him. Uncle Zhou smiled slightly, and his eyes swept over Chi-Yu. His eyes were slightly dull for a moment, but they returned to normal in an instant. Hai Ryue said coldly, "It's good that you're here. Ming-Ming, Chi-Yu, I happen to have something to talk to you about." Jita lowered his head and whispered in Chi-Yu's ear, "Master, which one is the Grandmaster?" Chi-Yu pointed at Uncle Zhou and said, "This one is." Jita glanced at Uncle Zhou and said, "Hello, Grandmaster." Chi-Yu chuckled and said to Uncle Zhou, "Teacher Zhou, I've come to find trouble for you. This guy insisted on being my disciple, and he even wanted me to teach him unique skills. I had no choice but to bring him here. You know what my level is? How could I possibly teach him? He's a member of the Special Forces, and he's also Ming Ming's brother, so he should be trustworthy. I remember you said you wanted to find a successor. I see that he's big, so he should be able to do it. Uncle Zhou looked kindly at Qi Yu and said with a smile, "You still remember." Jita said, "Grandmaster, I would like to spar with you." He was a straightforward person, and in his opinion, only those who could defeat him were qualified to be his master. Haiva, who was at the side, said coldly, "This is not a dueling ground. Uncle Zhou, bring him to the training room. Qi Yu, Ming Ming, you two come with me." After saying this, she turned around and went back to the villa. Uncle Zhou smiled and said, "Don't be offended. Miss has always been like this. She's actually a good person." Jita curled his lips and said, "I'm afraid this kind of woman won't be able to marry in the future. Whether she's a good person or not has nothing to do with me. Grandmaster, let's quickly find a place to spar." Uncle Zhou smiled indifferently and said, "There's no need to look for another place. Let's do it here. Qi Yu, you, and Miss Ming Ming going first. I also want to try this disciple you found for me. If I'm not wrong, he should be an external martial artist, but later changed to internal martial arts. However, his martial arts are already fixed, so whether he can inherit my martial arts is another matter." Qi Yu looked at Jita and said, "Good luck." After saying this, he and Ming Ming went back to the villa. Jita was born in the Special Forces and had always belonged to the destructive type of violent person. Seeing that everyone else had left, the expression on his face suddenly calmed down. If there were people familiar with him at this time, they would definitely know that this was the signal that he was about to make a move. In the Blue Dragon Special Forces, the calm Jita was called the Approaching Storm. Uncle Zhou smiled and looked at Jita, who was much taller than him. He spread his legs and stood there calmly. "Come, as long as you can make my legs move, you win." Jita was stunned. "Grandmaster, don't be too careless." Uncle Zhou's aura suddenly changed. With a calm smile on his face, he stretched out his right hand and slightly bent his arm. His body seemed to be swaying slightly, but it also seemed like he had never moved. At this moment, Jita suddenly felt a trace of strangeness in his heart. It seemed that Uncle Zhou had completely integrated with the surrounding environment. His heart trembled slightly. He knew that he had met a master. They had already set up their positions, while Qi Yu and Ming Ming had also entered the villa. The two followed Hai Ryue to a reception room on the second floor. "Sister Ryue, don't be angry. However, you also know the purpose of us Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Since we want to protect the East, we have to cooperate with the army." Ming Ming looked at the cold face of Hai Ryue and couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Before coming here, she had hesitated, but not only did Qi Yu's words made Jita very curious, she also wanted to see who Qi Yu was looking for to be her brother's master. Hai Ryue said indifferently, "Ming Ming, I know your identity. However, there is one thing you need to understand. Although we want to cooperate with the country, do you think that we, the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, are qualified? Our strength is far from enough." Master Zagru once said that, before the Zodiac Guardian Warriors fully appear and possess their own abilities, we must try our best to hide ourselves. The Zodiac Guardian Warriors have been passed down for thousands of years. In order to protect the East, we have sacrificed a lot of blood. Similarly, we also have enemies lurking in the East. Once our identity is exposed, it is very likely that we will face a devastating blow. I know that you have a sense of propriety when doing things. However, I don't want others to know our identity, especially Qi Yu's identity. As the weakest Kirin, protecting him is your most important responsibility. Ming Ming lowered her head and said, "Yes, Sister Ryue, I will definitely pay attention." Qi Yu sat on the sofa next to him and said, "All right, stop lecturing Ming Ming. I brought her brother here. T-Rex, I also have something to tell you this time. Do you want to say it first or me?" Hai Ryue was stunned and said, "You have something to talk to me about?" Her attitude towards Qi Yu had somewhat changed. Of course, it was not because Qi Yu's character had changed for the better, but because in just a few days he had unexpectedly found 3 Zodiac Guardian Warriors. It was good luck and ability, which made Hai Ryue have a whole new level of respect for him. One must know that the sooner the Zodiac Guardian Warrior's strength was awakened, the sooner the strongest Eastern Guardian Warriors would have enough strength. Chi nodded and glanced at Hai Ryue. He said, "The reason why I want to talk to you is very simple. I remember that you have a company, right? I want you to give me a job. A part-time job is fine. You want to work?" Hai Ryue thought that she had misheard. Chi said firmly, "Yes, I want a part-time job. I will do it when I don't go to school. The salary will be given according to my ability. It doesn't matter how much it is. However, the precondition is that I will provide meals when I work. This request is not too much, right?" This time, Hai Ryue was really a little curious. "Can you tell me why you want to work?" Chi said angrily. "What else can a person need a job for? Of course it's for money. I have to support myself. Don't you know that I've been relying on the state's relief fund? Now I have to go to school. I have already owed you a lot of tuition fees. Don't you want to pay me back? I don't have the habit of spending women's money. I have hands and feet. Naturally, I can work." Hai Ryue's eyes changed. There seemed to be something in her eyes, and there was a slight change in her expression. Although it was only for a moment, Chi still noticed it. "How about it, Director Hai? Will you give me a chance?" Chi asked eagerly. Hai Ryue looked at him and said, "Then what can you do? As far as I know, you seem to be only at the level of junior high school." Chi was suddenly speechless. "I can at least serve the dishes. I just want to earn money for my meals. My requirements are not high. No matter what, I'm the king of the Zodiac Guardian Gods now. I can't be a little gangster and rob money." Ming Ming's eyes widened. "What? You have done this before?" Chi Yu's face stiffened. He said awkwardly, I was just saying." Hai Ryue's eyes flashed a trace of a smile. "Well, when you have winter vacation, I will arrange a job for you. You also have to pay me back the money you owe me. However, no matter what the job is, you must do it well. You won't be able to serve the dishes, but you have to work hard." Chi smiled and said, "Then I will thank you first. Now it's your turn. What do you want to say?" Hai Ryue's face tightened. She said, "This matter is very important. It is related to the status of the Zodiac Guardian Gods in the whole East. Yesterday, I received a notice. 3 months later, on the 10th of January next year, the East Guardians will gather in Beijing and hold an exchange at Tianxiang Mountain." Chi Yu was stunned. He said, "Tianxiang Mountain? I am familiar with it. It is only a 30-kilometer drive from where I live. It is one of the nearest mountains to the west of Beijing. What's so serious about holding an exchange?" Hai Ryue sternly said, "Do you think it is for fun? The exchange will be held at the highest peak of Tianxiang Mountain, Gui Jianshou. It is called an exchange, but in fact, it is a test of each other's strength. Don't think that the East Guardians are monolithic. There are many disputes among the major forces. The time when the Zodiac Guardian Gods appear is not fixed. But every time we appear, we will become the leader of the East Guardians. This is something that the ancient forces can't stand. Every time we appear, they will think of ways to make things difficult for us. However, they also know that once the Zodiac Guardian Gods are gathered, there is no power in the East that can contend against us. Therefore, they choose the right time to interfere when our Zodiac Guardian Gods are not strong enough." Chi frowned and said, "These fellows are sick. Are they not afraid that after they hit us, they will be destroyed by the ancient beasts?" Hai Ryue indifferently said, "Some people are very short-sighted. Moreover, they only want to suppress us and make us unable to raise our heads among the East Guardians. They don't really want to fight against us. After all, when the Zodiac Guardian Gods become strong, no matter what the situation is, they will bear the responsibility of protecting the East." Chi curled his lips and said, "It seems that this exchange is a fight for fame and fortune. Then let them have it. Won't it be fine if we don't go?" "Nonsense." Hai Ryue's voice suddenly became abnormally cold. A strong, domineering aura spread out from her body. "As the king of the Zodiac Guardian Gods, how can you say such words? For us, although reputation is not the most important, if we lose it, then how can we command the entire East Guardians in the future? I've told you before that there's more than one powerful force in this world. If the East wants to be above all the other forces, then we must unite all the Eastern protectors. Otherwise, once the enemy invades, then our East will face an unimaginable disaster. Do you know why the East Guardians sent me an invitation? It is because of your appearance. Chapter 21. Hyryua looked at him coldly and said, "Don't forget, you're the king of the Zodiac Guardian gods. Naturally, you should be the leader of all the Eastern Guardians." Qilin was an ancient divine beast. When the bloodline in one's body was awakened, it would naturally emit the aura of an emperor. Ordinary people might not be able to feel this kind of energy fluctuation, but as the Eastern Guardians who had abilities far beyond ordinary people, they could clearly feel it. At the same time, they also know that Kirin is the weakest when he just appeared, and the Zodiac Guardian gods are not complete, so they will seize this opportunity. Ming Ming said, "Sister Ryu, must Chiyu go?" In 3 months' time, it was impossible for him to gain more strength. "I think it's better for the three of us to go, you, Tiger, and me. It should be enough." Hyryua shook her head and said, "Ming Ming, things are not as simple as you think. Those ancient families of the East that have settled down for God knows how many years, the strength they possess is very huge, and they're all independent systems. With just the three of us, we may not be able to gain the upper hand. Only God knows how strong those old fellows of the families are. Unfortunately, I just got close to the 6 clouds realm. If I have the strength of the 7 clouds, they will not dare to provoke me." Ming Ming said, "Then what should we do? Do we really have to bring Chiyu?" Hyryua glanced at Chiyu and said, "As the king of the Zodiac Guardian gods, he must appear. Otherwise, it will seem that we are afraid of those people. In these 3 months, we all have to work hard. It is impossible to rely on him. Only when the 3 of us increase our strength as much as possible, and when the time comes, can we deal with it. At this time, we don't need to defeat everyone. It is enough to show the strength of our Zodiac Guardian gods. When the 12 Zodiac Guardians gather, they will no longer have a chance." When Chiyu heard Hyryua's words, the muscles on his face couldn't help but twitch. A cold gaze flashed in his eyes. This was not the first time he had been looked down upon. However, being looked down upon by a woman still filled his heart with anger. However, Chiyu did not express it. He knew that everything that Hyryua said was true, at least from their point of view. According to Kirin's previous situation, he might not be able to become stronger in 3 years, let alone 3 months. In their eyes, his role was mainly to gather the 12 Zodiac warriors, not to fight. Since that's the case, then just wait and see. 3 months, which is close to 100 days, is it really impossible for me to have enough strength? Thinking of this, Chiyu unconsciously clenched his fists tightly. His heart was filled with the desire to become stronger. Ming Ming nodded and said, "That's the only way. Since the letter of challenge has arrived, we can't go to school anymore. How about this, Sister Ryue? Tomorrow I will look for the 3 newly discovered Zodiac Guardian gods, and then immediately bring them to Tibet to ask Master Zagru to awaken them. Although 3 months is not a long time, they will at least have the strength of Qian. Sister Modi herself is very strong. Perhaps we will be a little stronger when the time comes. When we reach Master Zagru's place, we can also cultivate in peace for a period of time. We can only put our studies aside for now." Hyryu nodded and said, "I think so too. After receiving your call, I have already gathered the information of these people. I will go with you tomorrow. I will take care of the school." Although it was a simple sentence, it fully reflected the power that Hyryue possessed. Ming Ming's gaze fell on Chiyu. "What about you? Do you want to go with us? When you reach Master Zagru's place, you can also properly cultivate for a period of time." Chiyu shook his head and said, "No, you guys go. I will stay in Qingbei and wait for you guys to come back. In any case, I'm only going to go through the motions and can't help you guys with anything. What's the use of bitter cultivation?" Hyryue looked at Chiyu with some disdain and said, "Do what you want. There's indeed no use for you to go and cultivate. However, there's another matter that I called you guys over today. There are a few things that I want to give you. Although you won't be able to achieve anything in 3 months, if you can use these things well, you can at least protect your life." Chiyu was stunned and said, "What things?" Hyryue didn't reply and walked in front of a wall. She raised her hand and lightly pressed on the wallpaper on the wall. With a cha-cha sound, the wall actually naturally split open to the two sides, revealing a gap that was big enough for a person to pass through. Not only was Chi Yu surprised, even Ji Mingming also asked curiously, "Big Sister Ryue, you still have a mechanism here?" Hai Ryue said indifferently, "This is something that Master Zagru gave to me for safekeeping. Originally, we shouldn't give it to him now, but this matter happened suddenly. If we don't give him some ability to protect his life, we won't be able to take responsibility if an accident happens. Come with me." Saying that, she took the lead and walked into the gap. The three of them walked in along the gap, and the wall behind them naturally closed up. This was an independent room. Hai Ryue did not know where she pressed, but a layer of faint brilliance suddenly appeared on the wall of the room, illuminating every corner of the room. Chi Yu suddenly felt an indescribable aura. That incomparably strong feeling stimulated his body to slightly tremble. Immediately after, that aura seemed to have found a relative and frantically rushed towards his body. Chi could not help but let out a muffled groan. His body slightly swayed, and he took a step back. The aura that he had just started cultivating today naturally circulated and quickly accepted the stimulation of this aura. Chi Yu could clearly feel that every cell in his body seemed to be active, and the speed of the aura circulating in his body was at least 3 times faster than when he cultivated today. Hai Ryue's voice sounded. "This secret room is built with special materials and can isolate all energy fluctuations. Chi Yu, you can pick up what belongs to you. If you can't take it away, then it proves that it still doesn't recognize you." Chi Yu did not seem to hear Hai Ryue's words. His gaze was already fixed on a metal table at the innermost wall of the room. On that table, there were 3 things. On the left, there was a tray, and on it was a piece of clothing. The fabric seemed to be very ordinary, and one could not tell what it looked like. On the right, there seemed to be a glass ball, and there was a faint brilliance circulating within the ball. Every time it flickered, it would change into a different color, going through the alternation of purple, blue, red, and green colors. That powerful aura from before came from this ball of light. And in the middle of the table, there was a piece of scale. The bright red scale was diamond-shaped, and there were slight bumps on it. The red color was like a drop of blood, and it flashed with a somewhat demonic light. The faint red light made the atmosphere of the room seem a little strange. Ming Ming and Hai Ryue moved to the sides, and Chi Yu walked step by step to the front of the table and stopped. He raised his hand, as if he wanted to grab one of the things, but his hand stopped in mid-air. "Hai Ryue, what are these?" His voice was strangely calm. Whether it was Hai Ryue or Ming Ming, there was not a trace of emotion in his voice. Hai Ryue said indifferently, "These 3 things are the treasures of Kirin that have been passed down. Originally, there were a total of 8, but with the hardships that Kirin has experienced in the past, now there are only 3 left. If you can find all 8 treasures of Kirin, maybe you can really have the power of Kirin." Chi Yu's heart trembled a little. He could feel very clearly that the 3 things in front of him had an aura that was closely related to him. It was abnormally real. Compared to when he first saw Xieji, this aura was much more intimate. It was as if they were a part of his body. "It's them, it's actually them." Xieji, who should have been sleeping, exclaimed in Chi Yu's heart. "What is it?" Chi Yu asked in his heart. Xieji said a little hurriedly, "This is Kirin's 8 treasures. I understand. I finally understand why Kirin chose to pass on his bloodline through humans, even though he knew the humans could not inherit the true cultivation method of Kirin's bloodline. Is it because of the 8 treasures of Kirin?" Chi Yu asked doubtfully. "Yes, it is because of these 8 treasures of Kirin. The 8 treasures of Kirin's 8 treasures are not other things. They are actually a part of Kirin itself. These 8 treasures were transformed by the 8 ancient Kirin before they died, using the last of their body's energy to create them. They were the condensation of all their efforts. Although it couldn't preserve the energy they possessed, each treasure had its own unique function according to the Qielin's different abilities. Just like what the heir of the dragons said, if the 8 treasures of Kirin's 8 treasures were obtained by an heir of Kirin, then, under the guidance of the 8 treasures of Kirin, he could unlock the mystery of his bloodline. This is the method of using Kieran's ability and integrating the bloodline that you saw today. Chiyu frowned and said, "So, this Kieran's 8 treasures are useless to me? Can't I already learn the real cultivation method?" Xiaji said angrily, "Of course not. Each of the 8 treasures of Kieran has an extremely powerful effect. However, they can only really play their role in the hands of Kieran. When you learned the application of Kieran's ability today, did you find any flaws in it?" Chiyu was stunned and said, "How could I find it? I just looked at it once. It is already very good to remember part of it. Even if there are flaws, I can only find them through cultivation. However, when I looked at it carefully today, I found that there was a big shadow at the end of the cultivation method. At that time, I thought that the application of Kieran's ability had ended, but the shadow took a long time to disappear. Now that I think about it, it may be the flaw that you mentioned." Xiaji said, "That's right. Those shadow parts are likely to contain the most powerful skills of Kieran. If you want to learn these skills, you must use the 8 treasures of Kieran to activate them. If you can have the 8 treasures of Kieran, then you are no longer the heir of Kieran, but a real Kieran. At that time, the bloodline in your body will be fully awakened. Rather than saying that you have the ability of Kieran, it is better to say that Kieran has the transformation of a human. With the 8 treasures of Kieran, you no longer need to be restricted by the 3 reading limit that I mentioned. You can study the application of Kieran's ability more carefully, and you can also see the last few great skills." "Damn, do you need to be so troublesome?" Chiyu couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied. Xiaji sighed and said, "You also have to understand this point, the ancestors of Kieran. You have to understand that the cultivation method of Kieran is the most superior method in ancient times. You have also seen that the Zodiac Guardian God warriors can quickly improve their strength by evolving the Ascending Cloud method according to the Ascending Chila method. If they have all the cultivation methods of Kieran, they will inevitably become more powerful. This was not limited to them. Once one obtained all of the Chilan's cultivation methods, any cultivator would be able to possess super strength in a short period of time. Therefore, the ancestors of Kieran have to be on guard." Chiyu nodded and said, "Then tell me what these 3 things do now. Didn't you say that they all have very powerful characteristics?" Xiaji said, "Yes. Each of the 8 treasures of Kieran is very powerful, but only when all 8 are gathered together can they fully release their power. And if there are only 3, they can only release about 30% of their power at most. The 3 Kieran's 8 treasures in front of you are also not bad. One of them is the most important red armor of Kieran. It is the scale in the middle. This scale was transformed from the most powerful fire Kieran in the history of Kieran. It has the ability to trigger the heavenly fire of Kieran. Moreover, there are many mysteries. I'm not very clear about the specific details. You have to explore it yourself. However, I can be sure that this red scale has a protective ability. When you inject your own thundercloud force into it, it can increase 10 times into a set of energy armor to protect your body. Of course, I am referring to the situation where you are below the 3 clouds. When you reach the 3 clouds and above, the Kieran armor that it transforms can only be combined with your own ability. The stronger your thundercloud force, the stronger its defense. Moreover, your thundercloud force is also related to the time it can be supported. If you can reach the same strength as the predecessor of the fire Kieran, then you can have the ability to use the red armor of Kieran forever. This red armor of Kieran has another name, called Kieran Red. It is the one with the highest defense among the 8 treasures of Kieran." Chiyu was overjoyed and said, "If I have it, won't I become a cockroach?" Xiaji was stunned and said, "What is a cockroach?" Chiyu smiled and said, "Isn't it a cockroach? Don't tell me you don't know this creature." Xiaji said, "Of course I know. Cockroaches are one of the most ancient species that have been passed down since ancient times. Although they are not powerful, they have appeared much earlier than us, the ancient divine beasts. Even now, they have been passed down for a long time. They have an extremely strong life force. It is also appropriate for you to use it as an analogy. However, there is one thing I want to remind you. With your current meager strength, You can only use the red armor of Kirin for 3 seconds at most. What? Only 3 seconds? You're not wrong, right? When Shiyu heard this, his state of excitement suddenly turned into disappointment. Xieji laughed and said, "Do you think that the 10 times defense is given to you for free? Although that is the energy of the red armor of Kirin, it also depends on your own ability. You must at least have the ability to mobilize the energy of the red armor of Kirin to use its defense. In your current situation, I am overestimating you if I say that you can hold on for 3 seconds. However, don't underestimate these 3 seconds. In a life and death situation, sometimes every second is very important. Think about it. If someone used an arrow to shoot you, how long would it take from the shot to the target? At least at that moment, the red armor of Kirin can help you resist the enemy's attack. Isn't this a treasure? What's more, there are many other mysteries in the red armor of Kirin. It is up to you to uncover it yourself." Chiyu said, "What about the other two? What abilities do they have?" Xieji said, "The ball on the right is the only treasure in the 8 treasures of Kirin that has neither defensive nor offensive power. But you must not underestimate it. In the 8 treasures of Kirin, it is ranked 4th and is called the Kirin Pearl. Although it can attack or defend, it is a treasure to assist in cultivation. This was transformed by the weakest Kirin of the 4 clouds, Kirin. In this regard, it is the same as you, but he is not as lucky as you. You are the 4 clouds ink Kirin, but he is only the 4 clouds Kirin. There is a little difference, but the difference is huge. Although he also has 4 abilities, he does not have a naturally tyrannical body like you. At that time, if he was given a year, maybe he would really become the strongest Kirin in history. Once he cultivated all 4 of his abilities to the extreme, no creature would be able to match up to him. Unfortunately, the enemies would not give him this opportunity. Although the 4 clouds Kirin could become stronger because his mind was divided into 4 parts, it was the most difficult to cultivate. In order to limit its growth, there was a holy war between the giant beasts. In the end, although the godly beasts defeated the beasts, it was a pity that the 4-cloud Qilin had no choice but to use the ultimate Qilin arm at the most critical moment, instantly killing the 2 strongest beasts on the other side and paying with its life. Before he died, he transformed into the Kirin Pearl. At that time, no one understood the function of the Kirin Pearl. It was not until a long time later, when an ordinary Kirin accidentally obtained the Kirin Pearl and used it to obtain all of Kirin's abilities in short 300 years, that the giant beasts understood that the Kirin Pearl could assist in cultivation. Because the sacrifice Qilin Senior was a 4-cloud Qilin, this Qilin Pearl would be able to assist the Qilin's cultivation regardless of the attribute of the Qilin. Its appearance also made the Kirin clan's position as the king of the mythological beasts more secure. It is also because of it that Kirin's ability improved and became even more abnormal. Therefore, although the Kirin Pearl's ranking is lower than Kirin's, it will be very useful to you. This time, Chu did not feel any joy because of the Qilin bead. Instead, a trace of sorrow suddenly rose in his heart as he looked at the treasure flickering with 4 different colors. He seemed to have seen the 4 clouds Kirin and felt the indignant expression on his face before he died. Yes, as the 4 clouds Kirin, he was regarded as trash by Master Zagru and the Zodiac warriors. Back then, didn't he also suffer a tragedy because of the difficulties in cultivation? Because of this, he used the last of his life force to condense this Kirin Pearl. He sacrificed himself to bring opportunities to his clansmen. Senior, don't worry. No matter what, I will use it well. I will never let the 4 clouds Kirin be humiliated because of the difficulties in cultivation. Perhaps it sensed Chi Yu's state of mind. The Kirin Pearl's flickering luster suddenly lit up. Although it was only for a moment, Chi Yu clearly felt a pure and intimate feeling, as if it was caring for him. The faint sadness also disappeared. Chi Yu, do you know? In history, you are the second 4 clouds Kirin to appear. The senior who condensed this Kirin Pearl is the first. This, your heavenly guide doesn't know. After all, it has been too long. As the king of a Xieji clan, I have lived for more than 3,000 years. I already have a strong ability. Originally, I didn't want to become the shadow of a Kirin. Although you're the king of Kirin, you are still too weak. Even if I want to become your shadow, I hope to wait until you are stronger before I consider it. However, when I know that you are a Four Clouds Kirin and, at the same time, a unique Four Clouds Ink Kirin, I no longer have the slightest hesitation. I hope that I can work with you, the unprecedented Four Cloud Ink Qilin, to create a brand new situation. The strong always hope to rely on stronger people, although you're not strong enough now. However, your potential is something that no one can compare to. Chiyu, with this Kirin Pearl, can I increase the speed of my cultivation of the ascending Qilin technique? Shiji said, of course, the Kirin Pearl has many benefits because it has the four attributes of the senior. After the four kinds of energy condense, a special space is formed inside the Kirin Pearl. Although this space is not very big, it is no different from the natural environment outside. As long as you can communicate with the Kirin Pearl, you can use this space and store your own things inside. Because it has the natural environment inside, there is no problem even if you store living things. As for the size of this space, it depends on how powerful your thundercloud force is. Perhaps the space formed by this Kirin Pearl is infinite. As for cultivation, you only need to wear it on your body, and the energy of the Kirin Pearl will naturally help you. These are what I heard from the ancestors of Xieji. I'm not sure whether this is the case or not. Chiyu, I understand. The magical effect of this Kirin octatic treasures mainly depends on my own ability. The stronger my ability, the greater the effect they can play. What's that dress? Xieji said, that is not a piece of clothes, but a cloak. In ancient times, because the sun was much stronger than now, most humans at that time would wear a cloak. Therefore, one of the octatic treasures named Kirin Hidden was made to suit the humans at that time. Kirin Hidden? This name sounds a bit strange. What is its ranking in the Kirin octatic treasures? As he said this, Chiyu's eyes couldn't help but fall on the dark red cloak. Xieji said, in the Kirin octatic treasures, Kirin Hidden ranks 8th, which is the last treasure. Although its ranking is the lowest, you must not underestimate it. But don't underestimate it. For you, the Qilin concealment is very useful. In the Kirin octatic treasures, except for the Kirin bead, the other 7 are mostly related to attack and defense. And this Qilin concealment is one of them. After the introduction of Xieji, Chiyu had already understood a little about the Kirin octatic treasures. He quickly said, in that case, Kirin Hidden is dark red. It should be left by a fire Kirin predecessor. Xieji paused. After a long while, it let out a low sigh. No, it is not. The reason why this Kirin Hidden is precious and can be one of the octatic treasures is that it came from an ink Kirin predecessor. Chiyu was stunned. Ink Kirin? Is it the fire attribute ink Kirin? She said, no. According to the information passed down by my ancestors, ink Kirin's attribute is thunder, not fire. The reason why this Kirin Hidden is dark red is not because of its attribute. Qilins had scales on their bodies, and golden and silver fur grew out of the scales, while the inked Qilin's fur was black. This Qilin concealment is not a scale armor. It looks like it's made of cloth. In fact, it was completed by the Black Qilin Senior using his own skin to condense the last bit of his strength before he died. At this point, Xieji's voice was full of sorrow. As a follower of Kirin, Xieji's feelings for Ink Kirin were naturally the deepest. Chiyu did not ask any questions this time because he felt the sadness in Xieji's heart. He just quietly waited for him to continue. The Ink Kirin predecessor was once a sinner of the Kirin clan. It was because of him that the Kirin clan was almost destroyed. Although Kirin was strong, every Kirin had a fatal weakness. Furthermore, every Qilin's weaknesses were very well hidden. Some of them were in their defense, some in their attacks, and some in their personalities. Kirin's weakness was the most precious secret of every Kirin, and it was difficult for even their companions to know. The Ink Kirin predecessor was the most favored of all 7 Kirin, because the other 6 Kirin were his parents, grandfather, grandmother, and 2 uncles. He could be said to be the pride of the entire Kirin clan. Therefore, the most precious secret of Kirin was not a secret to him at all. He was worthy of being the pride of everyone. In just a short span of 450 years, he became the strongest of the Kirin clan. However, he later made a mistake that affected the entire Kirin clan. It was also because of him that the number of Kirin clan, which had always been maintained at 7 to 10, could never exceed 3. Chi Yu's heart trembled. Did he betray the Kirin clan and seek refuge with the beasts? No, the Kirin clan is not only the king of the divine beasts, but also the most arrogant giant beasts. They are the most upright clan among the ancient divine beasts. However, do you remember that I told you that the Kirin clan is a playboy? The mistake that senior Ink Chelan had committed had been made by women. He was actually unable to extricate himself from falling in love with a female beast. It had to be said that this beast, who was about the same age as senior Black Chelan, was indeed the most outstanding of the primordial beasts, the nine-tailed fox clan. Her beauty and charm were incomparable to any other divine beast. Senior Ink Kirin had been cultivating and knew very little about the outside world. Therefore, when he found out the true identity of the nine-tailed fox, it was already too late. Xie did not continue, but Chi Yu had already fully understood. The nine-tailed fox betrayed Ink Kirin and told the ancient beasts about the weaknesses of all 7 Kirin clans causing the Kirin clan to suffer a devastating blow. It was also for this reason that senior Ink Kirin became the center of the Kirin clan. Chi Yu thought about it and opened up his thoughts to Xie. Your judgment is basically correct, but you have overlooked one point. As the most beloved of the Kirin kings, Ink Kirin was also an outstanding talent among the divine beasts. Whether it was in appearance or strength, he was a rare talent among the divine beasts. Although the nine-tailed fox betrayed him and caused the Kirin clan to suffer a huge blow, the nine-tailed fox also fell deeply in love with senior Ink Kirin. It was precisely because of this that this tragedy occurred and caused the emergence of Kirin. Chi Yu was a little at a loss. Looking at the dark red Kirin, it was as if there was a long river of blood rushing past his eyes. Xie continued. When senior Ink Kirin realized that he had been deceived, the ancient beasts had already gathered all their forces to launch a sneak attack on the Kirin clan. At that time, Ink Kirin's grandfather, grandmother, and parents were all destroyed by the ancient beasts at the cost of several 10,000-year-old beasts. Even Ink Kirin's father was the only one who had time to release the essence of his life, Kirin's arm. As for the other 3 Chelan ancestors, they died in vain. At that time, senior Ink Kirin almost fell into madness. He loved the nine-tailed fox so much that he was really unwilling to believe that all this was true. However, the facts were right in front of him, and he had to admit all this. In the face of the doubts of all the divine beasts and the tragic death of his loved ones, his spirit almost collapsed. In order to avenge his loved ones and to find out the truth of everything, he led the divine beast army to the nest of the beasts. Finally, after killing countless beasts, he finally saw his beloved nine-tailed fox. At that time, the nine-tailed fox cried. She only begged senior Ink Kirin to kill him. It was also at that time that the nine-tailed fox revealed her true feelings. After listening to the nine-tailed fox's words, senior Ink Kirin's originally black eyes turned blood red. Although his heart was in a mess and his spirit had completely collapsed, he actually calmed down at that moment. Then, he released his Kirin's arm without hesitation towards the 3 strongest ancient beasts at that time. In other words, he released all the essence of his life. Chapter 22. Xie heaved a long sigh and said, Yes, Ink Kirin was the only one who didn't die after releasing the real Kirin's arm. However, his strength was instantly reduced to its lowest point. The 3 beasts that had faced Ink Kirin's fatal blow were also seriously injured and couldn't possibly continue to live. After all, senior Ink Kirin didn't hold back when he released his energy. The Kirin clan had always been the strongest attack of the ancient beasts, so how could they resist it? The ancient beast's original plan was completely out of control because the 3 strongest powerhouses were seriously injured and they immediately fell into panic. Under the leadership of the remaining 2 Kirin, the ancient beasts slaughtered them crazily at the cost of fresh blood. It was also at that time that the Kirin clan declined greatly, but the ancient beasts also suffered a fatal blow. From then on, the entire ancient almighty beast era gradually declined. What about Senior Kirin? Since releasing Kirin's arm didn't affect his life, how is he now? Chiyu asked impatiently. He had already forgotten that Hai Ruyue and Ji Mingming were behind him and was concentrating on communicating with Xie. He was completely immersed in the story of Kirin's 8 treasures. Senior Ink Kirin's ending was tragic, but when his life was over, none of the ancient beasts blamed him. After he destroyed the 3 great beasts at the cost of his Kirin's arm, the ancient beasts began their massacre. During this process, the remaining 2 Kirin hated the nine-tailed fox, and their first target was to kill her. The nine-tailed fox didn't dodge. Her eyes were fixed on Senior Ink Kirin, and she was prepared to accept death calmly. She didn't cry, nor did she smile, but Senior Black Qilin could see the light of love and endless sorrow in her eyes that couldn't be faked. At that moment, Senior Ink Kirin felt the sorrow and helplessness in the nine-tailed fox's heart. Therefore, Senior Ink Kirin took action. Chiyu clenched his fists and said firmly, "If it were me, no matter what happens in the future, I will protect my woman. Even if everything is wrong, I would rather use my own blood to wash away the sins on her body." They were all family and loved ones. Since he had already lost his parents and family, he would never let his loved ones be hurt again, even if you have to replace me. This time, it was Chi-Yu's Xie's turn to be stunned, and his mind fluctuated violently. "Did you know?" "Chi-Yu," Xie said faintly. Chi-Yu was also surprised that he could say such a thing. He shook his head blankly and said, "Know what?" Xie said, "What that senior reported was the same as what you said. When he arrived at the headquarters of the primordial fierce beasts, he had already made up his mind to die. Because of him, 4 of his loved ones had died. He could not forgive himself, and it was impossible for him to continue to live. He led the mythological beast to the headquarters of the primordial fierce beasts just to do 2 things. The first was to bring hatred to the beasts and use their lives to avenge his loved ones. The other was to find out whether the nine-tailed fox loved him or not. At that time, he did not ask, but the nine-tailed fox's eyes had already told him everything. Therefore, when his 2 uncles launched Kirin's secret art to attack the nine-tailed fox, he moved. You said he moved twice. What did he do? Chi-Yu's voice trembled uncontrollably, and 2 lines of tears slowly flowed down his face. Xie's voice was a little choked. I told you that although Ink Kirin would not die once he lost the ultimate Kirin's arm, his strength would also fall to the bottom. He would need a long time to practice and rely on his own super recovery ability to restore his Kirin's horn. If he was at his peak, Senior Ink Kirin could even compete with his 2 uncles. However, at that time, how could he compete with them? Therefore, he used a secret art created by the Kirin clan. It was a destructive secret art, like Kirin's arm. It was called Release. Release? Yes, it was Release. He released his own soul. Only by completely releasing his own soul could he use the power of release. Unlike Kirin's arm, even Ink Kirin could not recover after using release. At that moment, the power that he erupted actually blocked the full blow of his 2 uncles. Chi-Yu's voice was choked. He could imagine the eyes of Senior Ink Kirin at that time, the despair in his heart, and the deep love he had for the nine-tailed fox. Release. What else did he do besides releasing his soul? Xie's voice became even lower. The so-called release was releasing all of his Kirin's armor. In other words, at that moment, Senior Ink Kirin injected all his soul into the Kirin's armor, forcibly separating his scales and hair from his body. With his weak body at that time, he released an unusually powerful strength. He blocked the attack of his 2 uncles. The entire battlefield stopped because of his sudden attack. Ink Kirin became Bloody Kirin. There was not a single part of his body that was intact. In the end, he finally grabbed the nine-tailed fox's hand. He only said 1 sentence. He said, "I am willing to use everything, including my life and body, in exchange for her life." Both divine beasts and ferocious beasts were shocked by his voice. His voice was not loud, nor was it emotional. However, it was this calm voice that contained incomparable majesty. That was the true majesty of Kirin. No one dared to offend his majesty. At that moment, he became the king of divine beasts again, the true king of divine beasts. Before he died, he took a deep look at the nine-tailed fox and did not say a word to her. I am afraid that only the nine-tailed fox could understand everything contained in his eyes. The tears in Chiyu's eyes wet the front of his shirt. His blood was completely boiling. Why? Why did it have to end like this? Why? Whose fault is this? If he was not Kirin and she was not a ferocious beast, if they did not meet each other under such circumstances, then how could everything have turned out like this? This time, Chiyu did not speak to Xie in his heart. Instead, he shouted it out loud. His voice was full of sorrow, and the atmosphere in the entire room became gloomy. An invisible majesty silently exuded from his body. The clothes on Chiyu's upper body actually turned into powder on its own. The black and silver light became extremely bright. The strong light was like a dazzling star. The four-colored light under Ink Kirin's feet emitted a faint light. Purple, blue, red, and green, all of them became unusually bright. Chiyu's eyes changed. They became two colors, one black and the other silver. That huge pressure caused even Ming Ming to unconsciously hide behind Ryue. Now, Chiyu seemed to have lost his consciousness. He slowly knelt on the ground. His movements were very slow, but every movement was filled with a dignified aura. When his knees touched the ground, he slowly bowed down. Every bow was so steady and powerful. When his forehead touched the ground, it made a loud sound, a total of 9 times. Each time, he touched the ground without holding back. When he raised his upper body again, his forehead had become a purplish red. The light in Chiyu's eyes did not change. He just knelt there. His voice became low, but he was still choking with sobs. 3 seniors, you have sacrificed too much for the Kirin clan. Perhaps I'm not a qualified Kirin. However, I swear on my life, soul, and everything that I will not disgrace you. In his eyes, there were not only 3 treasures of Kirin in front of him. At the same time, there were the souls of the 3 ancestors of Kirin. Looking at them, Chiyu seemed to see the heroic bearing of the 3 ancestors of Kirin. The ink Kirin on Chiyu's body slowly separated from his body and formed a huge light projection that floated behind him. A low roar came from Chiyu's mouth. The light projection of ink Kirin behind him raised its head and roared. Its silver and black fur became extremely eye-catching. The pure light suddenly erupted, and a huge aura enveloped the entire room. A red light seemed to turn into a red bolt of lightning. In an instant, it pierced through the sky and pierced the light projection of Ink Kirin in the air. The red light gradually became clearer. It was located at the chest of Ink Kirin's light projection. The black scales and silver fur, coupled with the red diamond-shaped scales that were emitting a bright light, made it look even more mighty. A scorching aura burned around Ink Kirin's body. Although it was only an invisible flame, the huge aura was enough to suffocate people. Original form mutation, dragon. Original form mutation, chicken. Both Ji Ming Ming and Hai Ryue couldn't bear the pressure and had no choice but to use their original form mutation. In an instant, white dragon scales and colorful feathers appeared on their bodies. At this moment, the pressure they were enduring was no longer painful. They could clearly feel that Chiyu's body was like a huge energy vortex that was constantly releasing huge amounts of energy into every inch of their scales and feathers. Under such circumstances, Hai Ryue and Ji Ming Ming closed their eyes unconsciously and began to cultivate in coordination with their ascending cloud technique. Zagru had once told them that as a Zodiac warrior, hard cultivation was extremely important. However, it was equally important to seize opportunities. Although they didn't know why everything was happening in front of them, they wouldn't miss such an opportunity. Unfortunately, they didn't see what happened next after they started cultivating. Chiyu, who was standing in front of the table, was still standing there calmly. 4 colored lights shone from his body at the same time. Then, the Kirin pearl on the right flew up slowly. Unlike Kirin's red, it didn't merge with Kirin's light projection. Instead, it floated in front of Chiyu. When Chiyu looked at it, it was like an eye that could see through everything. It stared at Chiyu carefully. They looked at each other and sensed each other. Chiyu's gaze didn't change, but the Kirin pearl started to tremble slightly. It was like a child who had left home and finally found his home. With a flash of light, purple, blue, red, and cyan lights shone brightly at the same time. Then, these 4 lights instantly formed a halo around Chiyu's neck. Chiyu's body felt scorching hot, cold, numb, and floating at the same time. Then, he felt a chill on his chest. The 4-colored Kirin pearl was tightly attached to his chest. Its position was exactly at the tip of the Kirin pattern on Chiyu's body. On the other hand, a thin necklace appeared on the Qilin pearl. The necklace was formed from 4 unknown metals: purple, blue, red, and green. It was a single entity forming a fine scale-like structure. It was calmly attached to Chiyu's neck, and the 4 sparkling and translucent lights looked extremely comfortable. Seniors, do you all approve of me? Chiyu's tears fell on the Kirin pearl. With a flash of light, the tears were absorbed by the Kirin pearl without warning. An invisible, domineering aura and a hopeful aura emanated from the Kirin pearl and enveloped Chiyu's body. The feeling of hope stimulated Chiyu's senses. He couldn't help but let out another loud roar, causing the whole secret room to tremble. Finally, Chiyu's gaze fell on the dark red cloak. He was still kneeling, but his eyes were no longer calm. His originally frivolous face had become unprecedentedly serious. Senior Ink Kirin, you and I are both Ink Kirin. I can feel your sorrow. I don't know what this Kirin pearl you made has. I don't want to know either. I just hope that as the heir of the Kirin clan, I can personally protect the ruins that you left behind and pass down your story forever. Senior Ink Kirin, can I take your body with me? Or rather, your skin. The sorrow became a bond that connected Chiyu and Kirin pearl. The strong aura of sorrow gradually faded. Chiyu could clearly feel that although Kirin pearl was filled with a strong resentment, it also contained a very special aura. It seemed to be the aura of hope, but it was a strange hope that could not be described. Senior, what do you want to say to me? Chiyu pretended to listen attentively, but all he could feel was the low whimper. The dark red Kirin pearl floated up like a dark red blood cloud. While Chiyu was listening, it had already quietly draped over his shoulders. The faint sorrow contained a feeling of understanding. It was a kind of recognition and seemed to be a kind of relief. It has recognized you. Xieji's voice was a little gratified. Senior Ink Kirin has recognized your aura. Kirin's octadic treasures can only be used by Kirin. They do not call you by your ability, but by your heart. Only by gaining their recognition can you become their new master. Your understanding and tears let Kirin pearl's sorrow be expressed, so it has recognized you. Chiyu gently stroked the dark red cloak that was like skin. Senior Xieji, after the death of Senior Ink Kirin, did this cloak appear? What about Senior Nine-Tailed Fox? What was her ending? Xieji said, this story has always been passed down among the ancient beasts and ancient ferocious beasts. At that time, after the death of Senior Ink Kirin, the essence and blood in his body completely merged with his skin that had lost its scales and hair. At that time, humans had already appeared. Perhaps it was because Senior Ink Kirin had a premonition of the future of the Kirin clan, so this Kirin pearl was created. When I heard this story from the ancestors, I thought that Senior Nine-Tailed Fox would die with Senior Ink Kirin. However, the result was not so. Senior Nine-Tailed Fox did not even cry. She just murmured, I can't die, I can't die. After that, he left with Senior Black Qilin's flesh and blood, but he left this Qilin concealment for the ancient divine beasts. Since then, no one has seen Nine-Tailed Fox, and no one knows where she went. She and Senior Ink Kirin's remains have become a mystery that no one has been able to solve until now. Chiyu said with some sluggishness, perhaps there's a reason that gave her the courage to continue living. But whether it is Senior Ink Kirin or Senior Nine-Tailed Fox, they are very worthy of admiration. Their courage and final choice are something that ordinary people can never achieve. If it were me, maybe I would have already broken down. Siege said, maybe so. What Kirin Pearl can bring you is the power of 3 invisibility. That is the concealment of breath, concealment of energy, and concealment of body. When you wear it, no one will be able to feel your Kirin breath, and they will not be able to feel whether you are strong or weak. When your Thundercloud Force and Kirin Pearl are combined, as long as you do not use Thundercloud Force to attack, then your body will remain invisible. Of course, the length of the invisibility is directly related to your Thundercloud Force. This is the same as Kirin Pearl. Moreover, Kirin Pearl has the ability to not be damaged by any metal equipment. It itself is a treasure with very strong defensive power. As for what its full ability is like, I do not know. Perhaps no one in the Kirin clan can fully exert its ability. After all, no one in the Kirin clan can reach the state of mind of Senior Ink Kirin. The clear light and shadow of Kirin behind Chi-Yu stepped on the 4-colored auspicious cloud and poured into Chi-Yu's body from behind and merged with him. Chi-Yu clearly felt that the power of the 4 clouds that he had lost because he used the ability of Kirin's arm had reappeared. Although it was not strong and could only produce a faint light, it really existed. The power of the 4 clouds was slowly circulating along the route that he tried to practice today, and his own Kirin breath had become more condensed. Hai Riyue and Ji Mingming woke up from their short practice. When Kirin Invisible was on Chi-Yu's shoulder, they could not feel the huge Kirin breath of Chi-Yu anymore. It was as if he had become an ordinary person again. However, when they looked at the ruffian Kirin from behind, they were surprised to find that Chi-Yu's body seemed to have grown a little taller. Especially the melancholy breath that they had never had before, it made him seem like he had gained something. "How'd you do it?" Riyue, who was as calm as the sea, could not help but exclaim. Chi-Yu wiped away the remaining tears on his face and turned around to look at the 2 girls. "I did not do anything. These things originally belonged to Kirin. I only protected them with my heart." Hai Riyue frowned slightly and said, "Do you know, these 3 pieces of equipment belong to Kirin. No human who inherited Kirin's bloodline has ever been able to fully use them. According to Master Zagru, the most outstanding Kirin in the past could at most get the pearl and the red scale. As for that strange cloak, no one has ever been able to wear it. It has an extremely strong aura of repulsion. Even Master Zagru's powerful Buddhist energy could not get rid of the negative emotions it carried. I am really curious why it would approve of you." Chi-Yu said indifferently, "Are you trying to say why it approved of a ruffian like me? I can only say that these 3 treasures of Kirin contain the story of our Kirin clan. But this is Kirin's secret. All right, can we go out now?" The way Hai Riyue looked at Chi-Yu changed slightly. At this moment, he seemed to have become a different person. In fact, Hai Riyue did not know that Chi-Yu was still immersed in the tragedy of Ink Kirin. Coupled with the feeling of Kirin's sad aura, he temporarily had this kind of emotion. Coming out of the secret room again, Hai Riyue and Mingming were surprised to find that the cloak on Chi-Yu's body was gone. The serious expression on his face also gradually relaxed. He sat on the sofa in the room as if he was very tired. His eyes were somewhat dull, as if he was thinking about something. Mingming glanced at Hai Riyue. Although they all knew that some changes had happened to Chi-Yu, no one knew where this change appeared. It felt like he was still so weak. Other than the aura of Kirin that had the demeanor of a king, there was no strong energy fluctuation. But for some reason, even Hai Riyue felt that she seemed to have underestimated this ruffian. After a short daze, Chi-Yu quickly recovered. "All right, Mingming, let's go. T-Rex, don't forget that you promised me a job." Hai Riyue said indifferently, "I will not forget. Mingming, tomorrow morning I will go to Qingbei to find you. Chi-Yu, since you have already obtained 3 pieces of Kirin's equipment and are also in Qingbei University, I think there will not be any trouble for the time being. This is for you. If you encounter any danger, you can press the red gem on it." While speaking, she handed over a bracelet to Chi-Yu. It was somewhat similar to the one she wore before. The platinum bracelet had a red gem the size of the first joint of a thumb. The rest of the bracelet was platinum. It was about 3 centimeters thick and 5 centimeters wide. Chiyu took the bracelet and buckled it on his left wrist. The size was just right, and it was completely close to his skin. Ryue said, "Your thundercloud force is still too weak. It is unable to detect a strong aura. Wait until your thundercloud force is a bit stronger. Then you can use it." The bracelet is also a pager. As long as you encounter trouble within the radius of 1 square kilometer, you can press the gem on it and turn it to the left. The surrounding Zodiac warriors will receive the message and quickly rush to your side. Also, after Ming Ming leaves, you must not easily leave Qingbei University. From the geomancy of Qingbei University, it is a dragon's cave. It itself has a very strong geomancy. Only in Qingbei University can your Kirin aura be restrained. This is also the reason why I will let you go there. After 3 months, as long as we can safely pass through the exchange, I will naturally give you a job. During this period of time, I hope that you will diligently cultivate and strive to find the other Zodiac guardian gods. When Chiyu walked out of the secret room, Ryue and Ming Ming had already recovered from their original attribute mutation. They once again wore their own clothes. Chiyu looked at the bracelet on his wrist. He turned the side of the ruby to his wrist. In this way, the real appearance of the bracelet could not be seen from the outside. The gem appeared dull and could not attract people's attention. He did not reply to Ryue's words. Instead, he directly walked out of the villa. Ming Ming looked at Ryue. Her eyes carried a bit of worry. "Big sister Ryue, actually Chiyu is a good person. No one is born a ruffian. Isn't your relationship with him?" Ryue raised her hand to stop Ming Ming from continuing. She coldly looked at Chiyu's back. "He is Kirin. To me, he is only a companion of the Zodiac warrior. If he can become strong, I will naturally respect him. But if he will only be a burden to us, what do you think I should do?" Ming Ming looked at Ryue, speechlessly. She lightly sighed and said, "Big sister Ryue, I don't know why, but your rigid relationship with him always makes me feel uncomfortable. Although Chiyu is a ruffian, I found that he actually has a very strong self-esteem. You have hit him more than once. I am afraid that there will be deeper conflicts in the future. Master Zagru once said that only when we, the 12 Zodiac Guardians, unite with the King of the Zodiac, Kirin, can we truly become strong enough to protect the East. I think Chi will slowly change." Ryue's face softened a bit. Her eyes revealed a trace of complexity. "Thank you, Ming Ming. Perhaps I really have some prejudice against him. I'll try to be nice to him. Don't worry, I will focus on the big picture. You should leave too. Don't let him wait too long." Ming Ming heaved a sigh of relief. She smiled slightly and suddenly leaned close to Ryue, kissing her affectionately on the cheek. "Thank you, big sister Ryue. I will leave first." After saying that, she quickly ran out. Ryue looked at the bouncing Ming Ming and couldn't help but smile. She indifferently said, "Silly Ming Ming, there are some things that you don't understand. Do you think that I can't see what kind of person Chiyu is? In fact, he is the same as me. We both have the ability to mutate. I am a dragon with the mixed blood of the East and West, and he is Ink Kirin. If I don't stimulate his self-esteem, how will he abandon his original hooligan habits and work hard?" At this point, the cold lines on her face suddenly softened a lot. Chiyu walked out of the door of the villa and was blown by the cold wind in the courtyard. He immediately felt much better, and the sadness in his heart disappeared with the disappearance of Kirin. He had just calmed down when he heard a bang. A huge figure fell 3 meters away from him. The one who had fallen was none other than his disciple, Jita. Uncle Zhou was still standing in the position where Chiyu entered the villa. His hands were slowly raised in front of him, and his footsteps were still the same as before, as if he had not moved at all, other than a few more wrinkles on his clothes. No one could imagine that Jita's huge body was actually thrown by him. Jita's appearance was much worse than Uncle Zhou's. He struggled to get up from the ground, and his clothes were already torn. Looking at his dirty face, it was obvious that this was not the first time he had fallen. "Damn, how is this possible? Grandmaster, how did you do it?" Although Jida was a little angry, it seemed that he did not want to try again. Uncle Zhou put away his posture, smiled slightly, and said, I haven't met a strong person like you for a long time. Your strength is very domineering, and the fire is enough. If I'm not wrong, your original cultivation started from external martial arts, and then gradually changed to internal martial arts. After a long period of hard training, you have cultivated to the current state. Looking at your own situation, you have reached the limit that the human body can reach. In fact, I can't win against you. I can only throw you, but I can't really hurt you. Your foundation is very solid, but what you lack is the application of internal martial arts and the assistance of some martial arts. Jida nodded thoughtfully and said, I heard from a senior in the army that my strength is already very strong. Unless I meet a real hidden master, otherwise I will not be defeated. I didn't expect Grandmaster to be a hidden master. You must accept me. I want to learn from you when you threw me just now. Uncle Zhou glanced at Chiyu, who was walking out of the villa, and smiled lightly and said, If you don't mind, from tomorrow onwards, come to me at 5 o'clock every day. I can take you to cultivate together. With your physical condition and solid foundation, you will definitely be able to carry forward my martial arts, and I will be able to face my ancestors. After saying this, he walked to Chiyu's side, smiled, and thanked him before returning to the villa. Chapter 23. Jida scratched his head and said, Your brother is screwed this time. This Grandmaster is much stronger than I imagined. No matter how I attack him, he only needs to slightly change his posture to divert my force to the side. Once I get close enough to touch his body, there's a strange force that flings me away. Moreover, this force seems to contain my own. It's as if he and I threw me away together. It's really strange. Chiyu's mood had already recovered a lot. He walked to Jida's side and said, This is called the 18 Stain Falls. You should learn from Teacher Zhou in the future. He's more suitable to be your master. Jida, I want to discuss something with you. Jida was stunned and said, What is it? Go ahead, master. Chiyu glanced at Ming Ming and whispered, What's the displacement of your car? Jida said somewhat proudly, 6 liters. Strong, right? Chiyu was dumbfounded. How much? 6 liters, or 6.0 displacement. F*CK. The Hummer seems to be only 6.0 displacement. Chiyu's eyes suddenly lit up, as if he wanted to eat Jida up. Jida laughed mischievously and said, The Hummer is nothing. This car of mine has been with me for 6 or 7 years. It's only after constant modifications that it became like this. Don't be fooled by its ordinary appearance. In fact, the parts inside are all special. There are a total of 12 cylinders arranged according to Volkswagen's W12 arrangement. I found special materials and assembled it myself. Moreover, I also used Chrysler's cylinder braking technology. When it's not needed, only 4 cylinders will operate, but in special circumstances, it can become 12 cylinders operating at the same time. Moreover, I also installed a mechanical supercharger on top. The maximum horsepower is close to 800. How about it? Fierce, right? Chiyu is speechless. This is an off-road vehicle. With such a large displacement, aren't you afraid of overturning it? Jida became even more proud when he heard this. How could it overturn? I added 2 differential locks to the front and back of the car. Its reaction speed is 1/10,000th of a second. In special circumstances, I can adjust it myself. All kinds of electronic facilities are extremely complete. Let alone an off-road vehicle, I even have the confidence to race with a super sports car. Master, do you like cars too? Chiyu said excitedly. I don't like it. I like it too much. Jida, did I hear wrongly? You said that you assembled this car yourself? The cows are flying in the sky. Jida snorted. Master, do you think it's that easy to be an elite in the special forces? The reason why I was assigned to this special unit is not because I can fight. It's because I have a special ability. Come on, let's talk in the car. I'll prove it to you. She looked strangely at Chiyu, who had previously been emitting a sorrowful aura, as if he had become a completely different person. However, she could faintly feel that Chiyu's sorrowful emotions were purposefully hidden and not as simple as disappearing on the surface. The three of them left the Dragonfield courtyard and got into Jita's car. Jita took out a stack of documents from the suitcase beside the driver's seat and handed it to Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu took the documents and flipped through them using the light in the car. Damn, tractor driver's license. What's the use of this? Motorcycle driver's license. You're so big, you can only drive a Harley. Special car driver's license. Special driver's license. Looks like you're really something. Damn, how can you have a yacht driver's license? What's this? Damn, it's a fighter jet driver's license and a helicopter driver's license. You wicked disciple, is there anything you can't drive? When Chi-Yu raised his head again, his eyes were full of shock. Jita laughed and said, Master, you're the king of the Zodiac. I don't need to keep it a secret from you. My ability is mechanical omnipotence. Not only can I use any kind of machinery, but I can also use existing resources to assemble all kinds of machinery that I need. I'm a genius when it comes to mechanics. Master, I'm also a PhD in mechanics. You can't tell, can you? Chi was completely speechless this time. Looking at Jita's huge body, he couldn't associate him with the word PhD. Jita's expression suddenly became dignified. Since we've already talked about this, I might as well tell you. After I left the Blue Dragon Special Forces, I directly joined a special force directly under the command of the Military Commission, the highest military authority of the Yanhuang Republic. The direct leader of this force is Mai and Ming Ming's father. However, to command this special force, it requires at least 3 members of the Military Commission to issue an order, and it can only be executed with the approval of the President of the Yanhuang Republic. It can be said that our special force is the highest military secret of the Yanhuang Republic. The codename of this force is the Soul of Yanhuang. Hearing the 3 words Soul of Yanhuang, Chi-Yu's heart suddenly beat violently. Then what kind of people are in this force? Jita whispered. There are only 20 members in the Soul of Yanhuang, but all of them are the best of the best. Some of them even have special abilities. Each of them has their own special ability. After I joined this force, I was codenamed Mechanical Soul. As for the other people in the Soul of Yanhuang, I can't say. Chi showed a look of understanding and said, Okay, I know this is a secret. I don't want to know too many secrets. If I know too many secrets, my little life will be in danger. Okay, let's not talk nonsense. Jita, how about this? I won't ask you for a salary, but you lend me this car to drive. How about it? Jita was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. As soon as he heard Chi-Yu wanted to borrow the car, he immediately reacted. No, absolutely not. Master, this is my life. I can't lend it. Even if I have to borrow my wife, I won't lend it. Chi-Yu unhappily replied, Don't tell me it's your concubine. Jita's eyes were filled with deep emotions as he gently stroked the steering wheel in front of him. Master, you don't know this, but I personally assembled every single part of this car. To me, it's like my child. Master, don't make it difficult for me, okay? Other than me, I haven't driven it for anyone else. Chi-Yu laughed and said, Jita, let's discuss it. I won't borrow much, just 1 hour is enough, and you can sit in the car and watch me. I promise not to damage your precious car in the slightest. I just want to drive it for a while, that's all. You know, men love cars. Cars can be said to be a man's second house. Actually, did you know that I've always dreamed of having my own off-road vehicle? Unfortunately, I'm poor. When Jita heard Chi-Yu say that he also liked cars, the expression on his face suddenly relaxed a lot. Master, you also like off-road cars? Great minds think alike. Chi-Yu laughed and moved closer to Jita. He squinted at Ming Ming and whispered, My biggest dream is to have an off-road car. I originally wanted to have a Cadillac SRX. Jita curled his lips and said, What's so good about that car? Its size can only be said to be average. As for the power, only the Polaris engine can be considered good. The production is relatively rough. There is nothing good about it. Chi-Yu smiled lewdly and said, You don't understand. Although the SRX wasn't outstanding in terms of performance, it had a little advantage. It had 2 buttons and 3 rows of seats in the car. After pressing the button, the back 2 rows of seats can be put under the chassis of the car. In this way, the whole back becomes a huge flat space. The length of the SRX is more than 5 meters, and the width is more than 2 meters. Once the back 2 rows of seats are put together, even a big guy like you can lie down. Then, get a hover bed ready, and you can sleep at any time. That's my dream. If I can have an SRX in the future, I can drive it everywhere to pick up girls. I will paste 4 big words on the 4 windows of the car. Jita asked curiously, what 4 words? Chi said proudly, mobile sex room. Jita opened his mouth and looked at Chi Yu as if he was looking at a Martian. Although Chi Yu deliberately lowered his voice, Ming Ming's face changed. She turned her head and looked out of the window. Chi Yu smiled shamelessly and said, how is it? Isn't it very creative? Driving such a luxurious off-road car everywhere to pick up girls, and also saving money for a hotel room. How enjoyable is this? It can be used as a battlefield at any time. Ji just swallowed his saliva and said, this works? It seems that only the SRX has this function. However, Master, if you paste those 4 words, aren't you afraid of the police arresting you? Chi snorted and said, what do you know? Those 4 words aren't pasted on one side. The police can only see 2 at most. Can I paste mobile sex room on one side and mobile sex room on the other side? F***CK, Master, you're too lewd. Jita's eyes lit up, and he deliberately looked at the back seat of his car. He seemed to be thinking about how to modify it. Chi Yu said, all right, are you going to lend it to me or not? I've already let you follow me in the car. What are you afraid of? Jita hesitated and said, Master, are you really only driving for an hour? Also, you can't collide with it. Although my car's safety performance is good, I can't bear to collide with it. Chi Yu patted his shoulder and said, don't worry, your master skills are not worse than yours. After all, I've been driving for a few years. Jita looked at the 19-year-old Chi Yu with a puzzled look. Although he had doubts in his heart, he could only nod helplessly. He didn't call him master for nothing. The strength of Chi Yu and Uncle Zhou had already brought him great shock and respect. The two exchanged seats and sat in Jita's seat. Chi Yu was suddenly very excited. He skillfully adjusted the position of the seat and the mirror. He really looked like an experienced driver, which made Jita feel a little relieved. He glanced at his watch and said, Master, 1 hour. All right, stop being so wishy-washy like a woman. Which button is the one that adds the other 8 cylinders? Jita suddenly felt like he was on a pirate ship. He speechlessly pointed to a button on the steering wheel. It was the first time in his life that someone said he was like a woman. Chi Yu secretly laughed in his heart. If Jita knew that he didn't even have a driver's license, he didn't know what he would think. It wasn't that he didn't want to get a driver's license, but it cost money, and it wasn't cheap. Jita's off-road vehicle suddenly rushed forward. Chi Yu's foot seemed to be unable to step on the gas pedal. When he saw that he was about to reach the red light in front of him, he forcefully stepped on the brake. The tires screeched and suddenly made a right turn. Slow down, Master, slow down. Jita listened to the screeching of his precious car and closed his eyes in pain. However, he had to admit that Chi Yu's driving skills were extremely skilled. His movements were very fast, and the gear changes were like moving clouds and flowing water. The car's speed was always maintained at a high level, and it constantly weaved through the traffic. Fortunately, Jita's car had a military license plate, so he didn't encounter any police cars along the way. It only took Chi Yu 20 minutes to drive from Longyu Courtyard, which was next to the airport highway, to the second ring road in Beijing. At 9 o'clock, the road conditions weren't very good. Even if it was Jita himself, it would be best to drive at this speed. With a screech, the off-road vehicle steadily stopped under an overpass on the east side of the second ring road. Chi said excitedly, Awesome, it's really F***king awesome. A good car is really different. Jita, your front and rear differential locks bring stability like a car. You must have installed a balance bar. Also, your car's chassis can actually rise and fall according to the speed. Not bad. That's even better. As he spoke, he had already opened the door and jumped out of the car. Ming Ming sat in the car and smiled bitterly. Brother, why do I feel that agreeing to lend him the car was a very wrong decision? Jita said, I think so too, but I've already lent it. Anyway, it's only an hour. Now, I just hope that the master doesn't crash my car. As they spoke, they looked out of the car at Chi Yu. Only then did they realize that there were already more than 10 cars gathered on the roadside under the overpass. These cars didn't look high-end, but from the exaggerated large enclosure and tail fins, as well as the colorful colors, it was clear that these cars had been modified. The engine hummed from time to time, bringing a burst of blood-boiling sound. Jita saw that Chiyu had walked to some of the people gathered and said something. Then, he turned back and pointed his car. Suddenly, the bad premonition in his heart became stronger. Chiyu used his body to block Jita's line of sight. His hands were in front of his body, and he didn't know what he was doing. From the disdainful gazes of those guys with dyed hair and obviously not decent people, Jita suddenly understood something. After a while, Chiyu returned. He sat back in the car and fastened his seatbelt. He laughed and said, "This time, I'm going to let them know how powerful I am." Ming Ming said, "Chiyu, what are you doing here?" Chiyu put a cigarette in his mouth and lit it. He handed one to Suda and said, "You still haven't come out?" "Of course, it's to race. In the past, I could only ride in other people's cars. Don't look at their ordinary appearance. The modifications are also very exaggerated. Each of them has a supercharger, and there are even twin turbines. They're very fierce. Today, I'm going to fight it out with them. Have you heard of 13th Wong on the second ring? It's that blonde over there. However, he's still not a true master. That woman over there with earrings is the most fierce here. She once set a record of more than 8 minutes for one lap on the second ring. Today, she's my target." "Master, that won't do. 8 minutes for one lap on the second ring. How fast is that?" "No matter what, the second ring is dozens of kilometers." Jita looked at the excited Chiyu and immediately knew something was wrong. Chiyu snorted and said, "A man has to keep his word. We agreed on 1 hour. There are still 40 minutes left." Chiyu ignored Suda and drove to the back of the dozen cars. He seemed very focused, as if he were participating in an F1 Grand Prix. When the time reached 10 o'clock, there was a huge roar onto the overpass. More than a dozen cars rushed into the second ring road at high speed. Although the second ring road at 10 o'clock was no longer congested, it definitely couldn't compare to the feeling of a highway. The sudden jump of more than a dozen cars immediately caused a screech of brakes. Chiyu switched to the lowest gear and slammed his foot on the accelerator. His right foot stamped on the accelerator and brake at the same time. The steering wheel turned, and Jita's off-road vehicle suddenly emitted a squeal. It moved sideways and entered the innermost lane. Then, under the effect of Chiyu's low gear and big accelerator, his speed was no slower than the other cars. Seeing that he couldn't stop Chiyu, Jita had to fasten his seatbelt and calmly observe the situation in front of him. As Chiyu said, the most powerful person was the dinosaur-like girl with colorful clothes. Her red car, whose original model was unknown, rushed to the first place. After a few beautiful intersections, she had already overtaken several cars and rushed out. Chiyu's eyes glowed brightly. As the car sped up, he followed the cars in front of him, weaving in and out. There were a few times when he nearly rear-ended a car, but he managed to pull the car back by stepping on the brakes. As he drove, he excitedly said, "You guys don't know, but racing is my favorite pastime. But it's too difficult to drive these guys' cars. Every time, I have to spend a lot of money to have fun. This time, I'm going to step on all of them." He was so excited that he didn't even notice the ashes falling on him. As the car swayed left and right quickly, Ming Ming's face became a little pale. Although Jita, who had been trained for a long time, didn't feel anything, when he heard the violent sound of the tires, his facial muscles twitched. He secretly prayed in his heart, "Master, you have to be merciful." The speed of the car continued to increase. The red car in the front had already left Chiyu and the others behind by 200 to 300 meters. Although Jita was distressed about his car, he couldn't help but admire it. Although he didn't like the girl, her driving skills were at least at a professional level. She grasped all the opportunities to overtake the car just right. In comparison, Chiyu was a little worse. Just when Jita thought that Chiyu couldn't win, the car suddenly tilted to the side, startling Jita. If it wasn't for the seat belt holding his huge body in place, he was afraid that he would have hit the side. He was surprised to see that his off-road car, under Chi-Yu's control, suddenly rushed out from the innermost lane and directly rushed to the outermost lane. Moreover, the car didn't stop, but directly rushed to the shoulder of the road. In an instant, Jita suddenly understood what Chi-Yu meant. The shoulder of the road was used for emergency parking. Under normal circumstances, no one would drive there. And now, Chi-Yu was fighting for his life. The next moment, he saw Chi-Yu press the button that he mentioned. From 4 cylinders directly to 12, coupled with the effect of mechanical supercharging, a strong sense of pushing back was felt. The off-road car fiercely rushed forward like a rocket launcher. In just 4 or 5 seconds, it had gone from 120 to 200. It should be known that although those modified cars could also reach this speed, it would take a long time to accelerate. The performance of the 12 cylinders was undoubtedly revealed at this moment. It was absolutely impossible to feel this kind of feeling without experiencing a high speed of more than 200 miles per hour. The scenery on the side of the second ring road suddenly changed. The scenery that should have been parallel suddenly seemed to be tilted upwards. The scenery seemed to be somewhat distorted. The speed of the off-road car continued to increase. It seemed that in just a few breaths, Chi-Yu suddenly passed the red car, which was originally in first place, through the shoulder of the road and rushed to the front. Because of his nervousness, Chi-Yu's hands were already covered with sweat. His eyes were fixed on everything in front of him, and he was ready to react as quickly as possible. When an ordinary car reached a speed of 200 miles per hour, the control would obviously be a lot lower. If the steering wheel was suddenly turned, it was very likely that it would fly out diagonally. However, Jita's specially modified car was completely different. The speed increased, but the steering wheel became abnormally heavy and stable. No matter how Chi-Yu operated, the whole car seemed to be one with his car, and it easily reached the goal he wanted to achieve. Because of the high speed, the chassis of the off-road car had been reduced to the level of a car. Chi-Yu fiercely weaved a few times, and with a high speed of 200 miles per hour, he had already left his opponents behind. The race was still going on. If Jita hadn't taken the cigarette, but from Chi-Yu's mouth, he probably wouldn't have even known that it had burned his mouth. This feeling of speed could definitely make people's blood boil. The traffic in front of them gradually increased. Although Chi-Yu was working hard, he had to slow down. From the rearview mirror, he could see that the red car behind him had already caught up with him. However, this did not cause Chi-Yu to worry. The explosive acceleration of the MW 12-cylinder engine, coupled with the mechanical supercharge, was too strong. Whenever the car driven by the eighth sister of the second ring road approached Chi-Yu, as soon as it encountered a straight road, Chi-Yu suddenly accelerated, and the car could suddenly rush out, pulling away in the blink of an eye. Dozens of kilometers was not considered short, but with the way Chi-Yu and the others drove, the victory and defeat of the second ring road was indeed decided in a few short minutes. When the off-road car steadily stopped under the overpass, Chi-Yu glanced at the car's watch. A full 8 minutes, not a second more, not a second less. Faint smoke rose up from the car's surroundings. The brakes were already smoking because of the high heat caused by Chi-Yu's rampage. Fortunately, the brake pads of Jita's car were made of special ceramic, so there was no heat exhaustion. It should be known that the weight of this off-road car reached an astonishing 3 tons. To brake suddenly required a very large force, especially in the case of high speed. When Chi-Yu jumped out of the car again, Jita couldn't wait to return to the driver's seat. He swore in his heart that no matter what Chi-Yu said in the future, he would never lend the car to this lunatic again. With his feet on the ground, Chi-Yu's legs were a little weak, and his body slightly swayed. Only then did he walk to the side of the road, lit a cigarette again, and smoked hard to calm his raging heartbeat. He was gasping for air. Although it was only 8 minutes, the high mental tension made him consume a lot of energy. By the time Chi-Yu took his first puff, the red car had already returned. A few minutes later, over 10 cars arrived one after another. This time, Jita finally saw it clearly. Chi-Yu actually took a stack of money from each of them. The expressions of those people, when they looked at the off-road car, were no longer contemptuous, but full of shock. He didn't know why, but at this time, the blood in Jita's body was constantly boiling. He wished that he was the one who was racing just now. Chi-Yu consciously got into the car from the front passenger seat. Before he could steady himself, Ming Ming had already grabbed his ear and said angrily, "Chiyu, give me an explanation. You actually used my brother's car to gamble?" Surprisingly, Chiyu didn't resist, and his face was full of satisfaction. "That's great. Ming Ming, don't you think it's great?" Ming Ming's face alternated between green and white. She suddenly pushed open the door beside her, jumped out of the car, and vomited. She almost threw up everything she had eaten that night. If she didn't have the physique of a Zodiac warrior, she probably wouldn't have been able to endure until now. The probability of a girl getting carsick was very high, not to mention such a crazy car race. "Ming Ming, are you okay?" Chiyu patted Ming Ming's back with concern. "Wow." Ming Ming spat out and glared at Chiyu. "If you don't give me a reasonable explanation, you're dead meat." Chiyu touched his nose and said, "You heard it too. That female Tyrannosaurus Ryua said that she would only give me a job during the winter break. With my current appetite, I'm afraid I'll starve to death by then. How can I not think a way to earn some money?" It turned out that before the race started, he had bet all of his remaining 2,000 yuan. Because of the prestige of the second Ring 8 sister, he received a ratio of 1 to 10. This time, he made a lot of money. Ming Ming took the tissue from Jita and wiped her mouth. "Didn't I tell you that I'll pay for your food first? Can't you pay me back later?" Chiyu smiled indifferently and said, "If I can make a living with my own ability, I will never rely on a woman. I'm a man." "Jita, I'm sorry for ravaging your precious car, but I promise that this is the first and last time. When I have a job in the future, I won't play this game anymore. This is the last time I race." Using this kind of situation to bid farewell to this place that used to make me yearn for my dreams can be considered a good ending. Maybe you guys don't know, but this used to be my favorite place. I used to come here every day. Even if I couldn't drive, just watching them race was a kind of enjoyment. But now I don't have the right to enjoy these things anymore. Speaking up to this point, he took a deep puff of his cigarette. His eyes revealed a faint trace of sadness, just like when he first walked out of the villa. Ming Ming's heart softened. She shook her head helplessly and said, "I hope you remember what you said. This is the last time." Chiyu looked at Ming Ming and said, "I rarely make promises. I'm a hooligan, a ruffian, but I'm not a person who goes back on his word." After saying this, he threw the cigarette but on the ground and used his foot to twist it. Then, he went back to Jita's car. Only when he completely said goodbye to the old could he become a new Chiyu. Until today, Chiyu had completely integrated himself into the king of the Zodiac, the inheritor of Kirin. His personality hadn't changed, but his original personality had gained a feeling that he had never felt before, and that was responsibility. He had to be responsible for himself. He had to be responsible for the noble bloodline of Kirin that had been passed down. After returning to Qingbei University, Jita bade farewell to Chiyu and Ming Ming. He threw a Chunghua cigarette to Chiyu. Chiyu didn't refuse, because he saw from Jita's eyes that Vol had looked at him. That was the exchange of glances between brothers. Brothers don't need to thank each other. Ming Ming found it strange that the moment the Chunghua cigarette entered Chiyu's hand, it suddenly disappeared. She didn't know where he kept it. Qingbei University seemed very quiet at night. Although the school's gate was already closed, it wasn't difficult for Ming Ming to bring Chiyu over the wall with her strength. The weather in October already had a slight taste of winter. A light breeze blew, bringing a burst of cool air. Chiyu stretched his waist and took in big mouthfuls of fresh air. So refreshing. "Ming Ming, don't you think so?" Ming Ming appeared to be very refined. She followed beside Chiyu and walked beside the lake in Qingbei University's campus, enjoying the rare tranquility. "It is very comfortable. It's a pity that I have to leave tomorrow. When I return, the greenery here has already withered." Chiyu said with a smile, "Did you read too many romance novels?" "In my eyes, Ming Ming is a lively girl. Don't be so sentimental. I won't be used to it." Ming Ming glared at Chiyu and said, "There's no atmosphere at all. You're just a ruffian." Chiyu revealed a lecherous look. He looked at Ming Ming's slender thighs and said, "How can there be atmosphere here? It can only be in the room. Ming Ming, you can't have fallen for me, right?" Ming Ming's face turned red. She said snappily, You might as well go and die. I like pigs, but I won't like a ruffian like you. Chiyu pretended to be surprised. Oh my god, it turns out that our beautiful Ming Ming actually likes pigs. So it's like this. Then I have no chance. Chapter 24. Chiyu was stunned for a moment, and his smile became a little forced. How have I changed? Have I changed for the better or worse? Ming Ming shook her head and said, I can't say for sure, but I feel that you're no longer the ruffian you used to be. Although you still look at pretty girls lecherously, something in your bones has changed a little. Really? Why don't I feel that? Could it be that I've become less lecherous recently? Hee hee. Ming Ming, do you want me to prove it to you? As he said that, he made a standard breast-grabbing dragon claw and made a posture of pouncing on Ming Ming. You, can you be more serious? Ming Ming glared at Chiyu and really wanted to kick him into the lake. Chiyu felt wronged and said, How can I be serious when I walk with such a beautiful girl like you? Have you heard of a joke? A man and a woman were in the same room in the middle of the night. The man slept with the woman, and the next day, the woman called him a beast and ran away crying. Ming Ming blushed and said, What the hell? It's so unpleasant. Chiyu laughed and said, Again, they had another chance to be in the same room. This time, the man was well-behaved and didn't touch the woman. As a result, the next morning, the woman scolded him again. She ran away crying. Guess what she scolded? Ming Ming was stunned and said, How would I know? Chiyu laughed and said, That woman said that you're worse than a beast. Ming Ming was stunned at first, but then she understood what Chiyu meant. She raised her leg and kicked Chiyu's, but shyly. Go to hell. Chiyu laughed. Ming Ming naturally didn't use any strength in that kick. He ran forward and said, Under this beautiful scenery, I'm in a poetic mood. He couldn't help but want to write a poem. The name of the poem is the story of Ming Ming and the pig. How dare you? Ming Ming angrily chased after Chiyu. Chiyu ran around a few trees and joked. Why not? Listen, the moonlight of the lotus pond floats on the water. Piglet hugged Ming Ming's waist. It was clearly a flick of the leg, a piggy on the waist, F***CK, sex. She murdered her husband. Plop. Chiyu was finally kicked into the ice-cold lake by Ming Ming, who had caught up to him under the influence of his perverted mouth. A few bubbles appeared on the surface of the water. After Chiyu's last cry of surprise, there wasn't even a struggle before there was no sound. Ming Ming was blushing from Chiyu's poem, but her expression changed immediately. She cried out, Doesn't he know how to swim? Almost without any hesitation, she immediately jumped down. The lake water was ice-cold and clear. After jumping into the lake, Ming Ming couldn't help but shiver. But she couldn't care about this anymore. She immediately searched for Chiyu in the lake water. Under the combination of embarrassment and anxiety, she was already a little flustered. Suddenly, a pair of big hands hugged Ming Ming's waist from behind. Just as Ming Ming was about to dive down again, she felt a gust of hot air beside her ear. So you care about me so much. This joking voice came from Chiyu. You quickly let go of me. Although Ming Ming was startled, her nervous mood immediately relaxed. I'm not letting go. It wasn't easy to find a chance. Who asked you to kick me down? Don't you think that my poem was very good? It's so rhyming. You're so annoying. Go and die. How can your crooked poem rhyme? As Ming Ming spoke, she struggled, but she didn't know why. Maybe it was because of the coldness of the water. Leaning against Chiyu's embrace gave her a warm and safe feeling. Her struggle also became symbolic. Chiyu gently moved his waist and repeated his poem, I realize that being a pig isn't bad. Ming Ming swings her leg. The pig pushes against my waist. Before he could say the word fuck, his mouth was covered by Ming Ming, who turned around. It was autumn now. The two of them didn't have many clothes on. When Ming Ming turned around, because she was hugged by Chiyu, her plump upper body immediately pressed against his chest. Their eyes met under the bright moonlight. Ming Ming's gaze seemed to be a little flustered, but when she saw Chiyu's clear gaze, she was a little stunned. The two of them just looked at each other, as if they had forgotten about time. Why aren't you going up? When Ming Ming felt that her lower abdomen was pressed against by something, she suddenly woke up from her daze. She hurriedly pushed Chiyu away and went up to the shore as if she was escaping. Chi-Yu soaked in the cold lake water. He smelled the faint fragrance. He thought to himself that it felt so good to hug a beauty. Unfortunately, such an opportunity might not come again in the future. Ming Ming went up to the shore. Fortunately, she was wearing trousers today, so something more embarrassing did not happen. She sat on a rock by the lake and hugged her curvy chest. Her heartbeat kept rising, and even her ears were blushing. Even if you haven't eaten pork, you must have seen a pig run. You could imagine what was below just now. It was the first time that Ming Ming was so intimate with a man. At this time, Ming Ming couldn't help but think of Chi-Yu's joke. If he insisted on not letting go of her, or if he violated her, what would she do? Although it was close contact, that ruffian just hugged her and did not do anything improper. Could it be that he was worse than a beast in the joke? Oh my God! Ji Ming Ming, what are you thinking in your head? With a splash, Chi-Yu also got out of the water and sat next to Ming Ming. He reached out to take off his shirt and twisted it hard, making a sound of water. Ming Ming's position happened to see Chi-Yu's back. Perhaps because of the excitement of his body, just now, the black and silver Kirin pattern had clearly appeared on his body. It was a perfect pattern. Even if it was just a tattoo, it was definitely the best work of art. Looking at Chi-Yu's body that seemed to have become stronger, as well as the black and silver Qilin pattern, Ming Ming's consciousness couldn't help but become a little hazy, especially the purple, blue, red, and green necklace around his neck. It seemed to add a bit of a noble aura. Ming Ming, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Chi-Yu put the clothes that he wrung dry on his shoulder. He asked tentatively. Previously, when he was kicked into the lake by Ming Ming, he held his breath because it was fun. He deliberately sank into the lake to see how Ming Ming would react. But he never expected that Ming Ming would not hesitate at all and immediately jump into the cold lake. At that moment, in Chi-Yu's eyes, Ming Ming had become a holy fairy. From her, Chi-Yu felt the feeling of family. That was why he threw away the concept of status in his heart and hugged Ming Ming. He didn't intend to violate Ming Ming. He just felt comfortable hugging her at that time. Not only was it comfortable physically, but more importantly, it came from his heart. Ming Ming glanced at Chi-Yu, but didn't say anything. Her body trembled slightly. I just entered the water. If the wind blows on me again, I'll get cold. Let's go back to the dormitory. Chi-Yu also felt a little cold. Ming Ming lowered her head and said, How can we go back like this? If Qing'er and Sister Yin see this, what will they think? But the wind is blowing here. You'll catch a cold. You still have to go to St. Buddha Temple tomorrow. It's all my fault. Chi was a little embarrassed and turned around on the spot. He wanted to put his clothes on Ming Ming, but the clothes in his hands were also wet. He was afraid that it wouldn't be effective. Ming Ming was still sitting there with her legs in front of her chest and her hands around her knees. She lowered her head and said nothing. However, the trembling of her body became even more obvious. She didn't know why, but at this time, Ming Ming didn't want to use the ascending cloud incantation to get rid of the cold. It seemed that this cold feeling could make her heart calmer and clearer. Just when Ming Ming felt the cold rising and didn't know what to do, suddenly, two bronze-colored arms wrapped around her from behind. A warm feeling came from outside the cold cloth on her back. Her petite body entered a warm embrace. The pair of outstretched arms wrapped around her hand, bringing her closer to the warmth of the chest. The original cold suddenly decreased a lot. The constant warmth was only separated by the thin cloth on her body. It made Ming Ming's calmed heart beat even more violently than before. Like this, you shouldn't feel cold. Let's go back after your clothes are dry. Now that there are fewer clothes, it will be easier to dry. Chi didn't mean to tease her. It seemed like he was talking about a very ordinary thing. The faint warmth kept coming. Chi let go of the hand that was holding Ming Ming. He turned his wrist, and a ball of fire lit up. It immediately brought some warmth to the front of them. It was the fire attribute Kirin Thundercloud Force that he had just recovered. Looking at the faint fire in front of her, Ming Ming suddenly felt the temperature on Chi-Yu's chest increasing. A scorching stream of air directly entered her body. It made her feel so comfortable that she couldn't help but moan. What is on your chest? Chi-Yu smiled and said, It is one of the 3 treasures of Kirin that I got today. It is called Kirin Red. It is on the chest of my Kirin pattern. It has a very strong fire attribute energy. It can emit heat just by slightly activating it. Do you feel warmer? Not only did Ming Ming's body become warmer, but the thundercloud force in her body also seemed to be boiling under the stimulation of the heat. It kept circulating. The Kirin aura that was emitted from Chi-Yu's body kept seeping into her pores, causing the thundercloud force in her body to circulate. It was definitely a wonderful feeling. Compared to usual cultivation, the speed was much faster, and there was no need to deliberately control it. The ascending cloud technique that Ming Ming cultivated came from the same source as Chi-Yu's ascending Qilin technique. Under the effect of the Kirin aura, the ascending cloud technique could naturally play a greater role. Under such stimulation, Ming Ming's six senses continued to strengthen. She felt Chi-Yu's steady heartbeat and felt his breath on her shoulder. The two were only separated by a piece of cloth, but they were so intimately touching each other. A faint strange feeling kept rising. Chi-Yu also felt comfortable. The feeling of hugging a beautiful woman was wonderful, not to mention a beautiful woman like Ming Ming. It was something that he didn't even dare to think about before. He didn't know why, but after coming back from the Dragonfield courtyard, the inferiority he felt when facing Ming Ming had disappeared. Ming Ming didn't seem so unreachable anymore. Although he didn't think about his relationship with Ming Ming, hugging Ming Ming's delicate body like this was indeed a very comfortable thing. Who is it? While Chi-Yu was intoxicated, Ming Ming suddenly shouted. A cold light flashed in her eyes as she looked to the other side of the lake. Chi-Yu also subconsciously looked in that direction, but he only saw a patch of darkness. There was no one there. Ming Ming struggled out of Chi-Yu's embrace. Her originally short black hair had two strands of red hair. Her eyes flashed, and she let out a sharp sound. The sound was condensed and didn't dissipate. It was like a sharp needle piercing in a direction. Qingbei University was still silent. Ming Ming's eyes revealed a trace of doubt. Chi-Yu stood beside her and said in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Ming Ming. Ming Ming's eyes flashed with a cold light. It seemed like someone was looking at us. Although he hid his aura very well, I'm a chicken Zodiac. I have a very strong sense of aura. When you released the flame from your hand, I clearly felt a trace of aura fluctuation. If it wasn't like that, I wouldn't have been able to sense his existence. This is an expert. He hid very well and ran very fast. Chi-Yu, you better come with us to Saint Buddha Temple. Perhaps this person is coming for you. Chi-Yu shook his head and said, "No, I'm not going with you. It's useless even if I go. In any case, in the eyes of Hai Ryue, I'm also a trash." Ming Ming turned around and looked at Chi-Yu, who was still naked. Her eyes revealed a trace of complicated emotions. Don't undervalue yourself. I believe that you will become stronger. Let's go back. I don't feel safe here. If you're really being targeted by someone, then we definitely can't leave you alone in Qingbei. Facing Chi-Yu, she saw the red scale on Chi-Yu's chest. To be precise, the location of the scale was between Chi-Yu's chest and abdomen. It was the chest area of the Kirin pattern. The sparkling and translucent red light was burning like a fire. It was very clear in the dark night. Chi-Yu opened his arms to hug. Ming Ming hurriedly stretched out her hands to block Chi-Yu's chest. "Don't. What are you doing?" Chi-Yu said with a calm face. "It's not like I haven't hugged before. I'm just helping you to keep warm." Ming Ming snorted unhappily. "You ruffian only know how to bully me. Go back." Saying that, she gently pushed Chi-Yu away and quickly walked towards the dormitory. "Ming Ming, you're not really angry, are you?" Chi-Yu hurriedly chased after her and followed Ming Ming back to the dormitory. When their figures gradually disappeared into the darkness, a faint black shadow appeared at the place where Ming Ming was looking at. Because it was in the shadow, it was impossible to see his appearance. A deliberately suppressed voice sounded. "He appeared. He really appeared. What should I do? I actually met him here. Could it be that this is the beginning of another fate?" The black shadow flashed and floated away at a speed that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. When his figure passed through the moonlight, it revealed a fiery red light. Ming Ming and Chi-Yu quietly returned to the dormitory. As soon as they entered the door, Ming Ming went straight back to her room. Chi-Yu didn't go looking for trouble, and also went back to his room. Closing the door behind him, he subconsciously touched the Kirin pearl on his chest. A faint feeling of energy spread out. Chi Yu's eyes once again revealed sadness. The first thing he took out was the Chunghwa cigarette that Jita gave him, followed by the money he won from racing. Finally, the dark red cloak, Kirin Invisibility. He carefully wore Kirin Invisibility on his body, covering every part of his body. Kirin Invisibility seemed to be specially made for him. The length just covered his feet. The symbol of the Kirin clan, Kirin's 8 treasures, appeared. Chi Yu knew that for him, the 3 Kirin treasures that he obtained today were too important. The 3 Qilin treasures he had obtained today were simply too important. With them, his strength would definitely increase by a large margin. Of course, this would also be established on the basis of continuous cultivation. Stroking the radiant Kirin Invisibility, Chi Yu couldn't help but think of Ming Ming. Was his joke today a little too much? After all, Ming Ming only regarded him as a friend. Tomorrow, they would go to St. Buddha Temple. No one could predict what would happen in 3 months. He hoped that they would have a safe journey. At this point, Chi Yu suddenly thought of Vol and hurriedly picked up the phone on the table. He quickly picked up the phone on the table and dialed Vol's number. The phone rang for a long time before it was connected. Vol's hazy voice was full of sleepiness. "Who is it? It's so late. Is there something wrong with you?" Chi Yu said in a low voice, "Rat, it's me." Hearing Chi Yu's voice, Vol suddenly woke up a little. "Boss, why are you calling me so late?" Chi Yu said, "Tomorrow, you may go to St. Buddha Temple together. I'm calling to remind you." "What? Tomorrow? Isn't it supposed to be winter vacation?" Vol was a little surprised. Chi Yu said, "They will tell you the reason tomorrow. Hai Ryue, that Tyrannosaurus Rex, has always been resourceful. Naturally, he will find a way to get you out. Rat, I'm just telling you that if you want to become stronger and get the woman you love, then you have to put in more effort than others. I think you understand it very well. Among the Zodiac Guardian Gods, you are the youngest and the weakest among the 6 Zodiac Guardian Gods that have appeared." Vol was silent for a while before he said, "Boss, I understand what you mean." After witnessing the battle between Modi and Ming Ming, coupled with Ming Ming's explanation, he also had a certain understanding of the special system of the Zodiac Guardian Gods. Chi Yu's meaning was clear. He was telling him that if he wanted to be with his beloved teacher Modi, then he must have enough strength. "Boss, I have been thinking about it these days. Do you think teacher Modi and I are suitable for each other? Do I have a chance?" Chi Yu was stunned for a moment. He deeply felt the helplessness in Vol's words. He said firmly, "Good brother, no matter what, I will stand by your side. Age is not a gap. As long as you put in your heart and work hard, I think you will succeed." Vol was a little emotional. "Boss, I think so too. I have seen many beautiful women, but none of them can make me yearn for them day and night like teacher Modi. I'm ugly and fat like a ball. I always have a feeling of inferiority in front of her. I really like her. What should I do?" Chi Yu thought for a moment and said, "This is a very good opportunity. This time, we'll go to St. Buddha Temple for about 3 months. You must make good use of this time. I think, if a man wants to attract a woman's attention, he must first show his ability to surpass others. Therefore, as I said, work hard to practice the ascending cloud art and become a qualified zodiac warrior. This is the foundation of your success." "I understand. Boss, I will work hard. You also have to work hard. Sister Ming Ming is very good." Chi Yu was stunned for a moment. "Me and Ming Ming are just ordinary friends. There's really nothing between us." Vol laughed and said, "As if I believe you. Boss, I don't know others, but don't I know you? A beauty like Sister Ming Ming is at least at the level of lament in your heart. If you don't make a move, you will not be yourself." Chi Yu said with a bitter smile, "If I really meet a beauty of this level, it will not be as easy as you think." Vol said, "Boss, no matter how difficult it is for you, it can't be more difficult than me chasing teacher Modi. Even I have confidence. Why don't you?" Chi Yu said with a low smile, "You don't understand this. My energy is limited. Now there's so many beauties, I can't give up the whole forest for a tree. I am a man of universal love. Well, you go to bed early. Tomorrow morning, Ming Ming will find you. After saying this, Chiyu directly hung up the phone. In fact, Vol's last sentence touched him a lot. Yes, even Vol can work hard for Modi, who is so far away from him. Why can't I go after Ming Ming? He shook his head hard. Forget it, these things are not important now. I will think about it when I have the ability to defend Kiran's dignity. Chiyu has always been a person who could take it easy. Today, listening to Xie Ji's story of Kiran, he was greatly touched. He no longer felt sad because of emotional things. He took off his wet clothes, sat on the bed, and began another practice. The thundercloud force was obviously much more tangible than the aura. Last time when he tried to practice, you could only feel the general path of his aura. This time, his thundercloud force had recovered on its own. The four colors of purple, blue, red, and cyan appeared very clearly in the blood vessels in his body. Every time it flowed, he could clearly see its trajectory. A warm feeling flowed in front of his chest. Every time the Kiran bead changed color, Chiyu could feel an aura merging with the thundercloud force in his body. Under the stimulation of the Kiran bead, the speed of the four-color thundercloud force's operation increased significantly. This was not the most surprising thing. What was more wonderful was that every time the thundercloud force operated, it would automatically absorb the molecular energy in the air through the pores. It could be clearly seen that the tiny light spots of the four colors were constantly combined with the thundercloud force in his body. Although there was no obvious strengthening of the thundercloud force, Chiyu felt that this practice was obviously much stronger than when he first started practicing the Qilin Ascension technique. Gradually, Chiyu was completely immersed in the wonderful process of practicing. In the situation of multitasking, on one hand, he practiced the thundercloud force. On the other hand, he was always paying attention to the changes of the Kiran bead and thinking about the Kiran skills that he barely remembered yesterday. He was not in a hurry to practice the Kiran stunt. Through his understanding of Kiran's ability, he knew that the thundercloud force was the foundation of everything. Without a powerful thundercloud force as a backing, any skill could not exert its original ability. Therefore, what he needed most now was to make his thundercloud force stronger. Cultivation often sped up time. By the time Chiyu awoke from his meditative state, it was already the next morning. He moved his energetic body, changed into clean clothes, and walked out of the room. As soon as he went out, Chiyu found that he was late. There was breakfast on the table in the hall, but there was no one in the dormitory. Perhaps it was to avoid Chiyu, but Ming Ming had left long ago. Su Qing and Shun Yun had classes in the morning, so they also left. Chiyu thought that since he was already late, he might as well not go to class today. Anyway, the university's management was not strict. With his homework foundation, he was afraid that no matter how hard he worked, he would not be able to learn anything. After eating breakfast, he lit a cigarette for himself and took a few deep puffs. There was an indescribable feeling of relaxation. He walked to the window of the dormitory and looked out. At this time, Qingbei University was very quiet. Most of the students had gone to class, and there were only a few students who had no classes walking around in the dormitory area. Fresh air came from the open window, blowing Chiyu's somewhat messy long hair. Chiyu looked at his naked upper body. He discovered that the muscles on his body seemed to have some lines, and his movements seemed to have more power. With the Kirin pearl on his neck, his cultivation was clearly much faster. Moreover, it seemed that the cultivation technique he practiced had also changed. It was a change in essence. As for what the Kirin pearl could bring, it would need time to verify. Just as he finished smoking the cigarette in his hand, his phone rang. "Grandpa, grandson has a call." Hearing this strange ringtone, Chiyu could not help but reveal a trace of a smile, and hurriedly returned to his room to pick up his phone. "Who is it?" "Chiyu, it's me." Although the cold voice came from the phone, it still could not help but make Chiyu shiver. Other than T-Rex, there was no one who could make him feel this way. "What? T-Rex?" Chiyu asked lazily. "Hi, Ryua," said slightly angrily. "I have a name. Next time I hear you call me that, I'll smash your mouth." Chiyu frowned and moved the phone away from his ear. "Enough, don't throw your tyrannical temper at me. If you have something to say, quickly say it." "Hi, Ryua," said. "Ming Ming and the other three have already left, and I have also informed Master Zagru. I heard from Ming Ming that there seem to be some unstable factors in the Qingbei region. Come out of the school now. I'll pick you up at the school gate and bring you to see someone. Qiyu stared blankly and said, See who? Hai Ryua said coldly. Ming Ming has left, and there must be someone to protect you. He is the most suitable candidate. He is the tiger that you have not seen yet. Tiger? All right, I'll come out immediately. Toward the Zodiac guardian warrior that he had not seen before, Qiyu immediately became interested. How good would it be if this was also a beauty? I hope it's not a tigress.